Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich, and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We're a one-stop shop for all things motorsport, and we can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram predominantly. So search for the Hard Compound on any of those platforms, and you'll find us. Excuse me. The only reason we are here is to share a love of motorsport, and we cover everything from F1 to IndyCar to touring cars and NASCAR and rallying and bikes and World Endurance Championship and everything else in between as best we can. We put out 3 articles a day in the morning, lunchtime and evening here in the UK. So whatever time that is where you're tuning in from. These take the form of race reviews, race previews, throwbacks, birthdays, livery reveals, breaking news and anything else we can shake a stick at, really. Yes, do come along. As I said, search for the Hard Compound on any of those platforms and you'll find us. Come along and join the fun. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live video interviews just like this one. And just like this one, these are broadcast on our Facebook, Twitter and our YouTube channel. So do go and find us on YouTube as well. The chats are automatically saved in the live section on YouTube and the video section on Facebook. And there's about 150 of them to go back through and have a look if you like. And we've had some fantastic guests. I won't name them all. I'm just going to a very brief overview of who we've had on. We've had legends such as like Mario Andretti and Jackie Ickx and Hans Stuck and Chip Ganassi. They've all been on for a chat. We've had like Malcolm Wilson from the rallying world. We've had like touring car racers, guys like Steve Soper and John Cleland and Ivan Muller and Gabriele Tarquini, Rickard Rydell. We've had Indy 500 and IndyCar racers and winners, guys like Alonso Jr., Danny Sullivan, Ari Landijk, Will Power, Alex Palou. We've had like Derek Daly and like Connor Daly, Emanuele Perro, Carl Wendling and Mark Blundell. Many terrific guests. So do go and check them out, but don't do it just yet because we have another fantastic guest, someone that I've been wanting to get on here for a while, and I've been pestering with emails, and he's finally given in. He's raced up through the single-seater ladder in North America. He's raced in what is now IndyCar. He's raced in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the Craftsman Trucks, and in the NASCAR Canada Series, the Pinty Series, and in Supercars, including the Bathurst 1000, which is this weekend. So enough of rambling from me. I'm going to bring him in right now. I'm looking forward to this because he's a great guy and we've had a great chat off camera. So please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Alex Tagliani.
How are you, my friend?
How are you? I'm very well, Alex. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Very good.
I'm kind of out of breath from the intro. It just keeps getting longer.
Some of the names you mentioned, I saw when we did this race of champs or legends race at the Mexico City Grand Prix that Michel Jourdain organized with some of his friends down there, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a cool event. I saw that. Yes. It's just a few thousand miles too far away from me, unfortunately. Which is a real shame. But
and it's actually coming up as well again. So yeah,
so it's like end of season type thing, isn't it? So yeah, that should be cool. That should be very cool. Excuse me, I'm just at the end of a little cough here. But no, firstly, Alex, thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you sparing some time in the afternoon, obviously where you are, to come on and have a chat and talk about your career. I can't wait.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. Well, firstly, folks, I want to say hello to the folks in the comment section already. We've got Roger Algar, Tracy Hickley, and Sharon's in, and Diffan Evans. And there's a few others tuning in as well. In case you didn't know, we had our 5th birthday yesterday, and thank you to everyone who tuned into the live chat last night. We had Derek Daly and Emanuele Perro and some touring car drivers on, which is very, very cool. So thank you everyone for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions, pop them in, and we'll try and work them into the chat as best we can. Thank you very much. Right, okay. Firstly, Alex, one thing I do have to say, I saw the advert you did for your cookies on Instagram. That was absolutely brilliant, guys. If you've got Instagram, go and check out Alex's Instagram. It's a fantastic advert. Was it your daughter was involved as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, Halloween is coming, right? So, um, well, first of all, you know, the truth is, my daughter, she loves the cookies that we created, and they're perfect for lunchbox. But you know, now these days with her new costume, Harley Quinn, any reason you can give her to put the costume, she will have no problem supporting you in a video. So, you know, and if it's not coming from you, she'll tell you, "Oh, Daddy, we should do that. I should put my costume." So anyway, it was probably one of the easiest video that I have to do, because I asked her to put her costume, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's great. I just love the last line as well. The last line was saying, "No, if you eat these, you know, you'll be safe."
Yeah, exactly.
That was great.
No, but the funny thing is, you know, sometimes you're trying to get some inspiration to do something that is real. And, you know, like, you know, the other day, you know, my wife had to leave, and I was like helping her with her snack, and she was asking me, "Did you put a cookie?" And then sometimes at nighttime after school, you know, she comes home, a very quick snack, and then, you know, we drive her to dance. She does dance, and she doesn't have time to eat. So her dinner is late, but
Right.
you know, like, then she will basically have, you know, a tag on the go oatmeal cookie for prior to her dance. So she's the one asking it regularly. So it was just natural to put her in the video.
No, that's brilliant, and it is great. I kind of had a bit of a laugh earlier on when I saw it. I was like, I'm talking to that guy tonight. I've got to mention it.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems to be easy for her now with it, but you know, like this. I mean, I have this partnership for what, 10 years plus. And you know, I remember when I was traveling, you know, IndyCar racing, I had like a couple of really scary reactions in the plane on my way to Australia, in a restaurant, you know, with a team dinner in Indianapolis. They had to intubate me in Indianapolis for 72 hours because we had like a team dinner. And you know, I was always, you know, quite careful, you know, and asking it. And the dinner was organized around not me, but basically like the team gal that organized it. She mentioned that, you know, one of the driver, you know, was severely allergic to nuts, peanuts, almonds, all that. And so at the end of the dinner, when the dessert arrived, it was a cheesecake. And I kept asking again, you know, I kept bothering the waitress and say, "Okay, like, yeah, we know. And she goes, no, there's nothing. The crust is graham crackers. You know, you're safe." So even just because I'm paranoid, I turned the cake on the side, and I just took all the crust out, and I just kept the simple cheese and with the raspberry coulis, and that was it, you know. But I didn't notice that there was an almond paste on top, white on white, and it was covered. So I took a bite, and you know, within 5 seconds, my throat closed up, and then I'm going for my EpiPen, and I realize it's in the rental car in the parking lot.
Oh,
That
no.
was the first mistake. And then I sprinted to the car, you know, screaming to everybody, "Call 911, I'm going to die." And then when I got to the rental car, I was like, you know, trying to breathe because I just sprinted. Nothing was coming in. And I knew that, you know, with the lack of oxygen, I was probably going to pass out without being able to get back to the restaurant. So I start seeing people coming out of the door, following me in the parking lot. So instead of injecting me with the EpiPen right there in my leg, I ran back. And by the time I arrived there, the last couple of seconds that I have, I was actually want to make sure that, you know, I could see the needle going in. So, you know, instead of injecting me through my pants, like I know it's what you need to do, I literally bring my pants down to my ankle and try to inject me. But then I collapse with the pants up to my ankle on the ground, right? And luckily enough, the paramedics showed up, and, you know, they explained to them that, you know, I had allergy to food, and they intubate me in the parking lot. So because I tried to breathe so hard, you know, with the sprinting, they were afraid that, you know, I had some food that got into my airways, into my
Yeah.
lungs. So that's why they kept me induced in a coma for 72 hours at the Indianapolis hospital, and just get me a lot of medication to try to make sure that the lungs were not going to get infected. So this is
Wow.
only one from my many reactions. And the reason is, and I got one where I had to play Dukes of Hazzard in Vegas, myself jumping runabouts and driving like a madman to get myself to the emergency, because I stopped at a gas station and I was building a house and I was super hungry. The building process took a toll on me, and I was like not eating a lot, skipping breakfast. And so I got to put gas at the gas station, and I grabbed a cookie, and literally I look, and the cookie was packaged with transparent packaging, and the black ingredients on the oatmeal cookie, it was not really
You couldn't
easy
see
to
it.
read, right? So I drive and I look, and and I just passed on walnut, and I just didn't see that it had walnuts. And so I start having the reaction in the car, and
Wow.
I didn't bring my EpiPen from the house. Stupid me, because I was not planning on having dinner. I was not planning to have lunch. I was not I was not planning on eating on the road.
Right.
And so I just basically drove like a madman to the emergency, and just ran like in the movies. And I ran into the emergency. I said, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Like I have a reaction allergy. I cannot breathe. And they just saved
Wow.
me right there. So
That's
yeah, like,
incredible.
yeah, lots of so yeah, anyway, so I said, oh, that's where the idea came from. I need to get myself a stupid snack, that I can basically carry with me, that I can have when I do bike rides, or just traveling, and bypass all these snacks that are in airports and in gas stations and everywhere, because I was traveling a lot. And
Wow.
throughout these years, like the 20 years went by with all these experiences, but now, the world of food and grocery shopping and all that, it's got way better, because the ingredients are way better labeled, and there's warning, this may contain, this is processed in a facility of blah blah blah. But it was not like that 20 years ago. So anyway, but yeah, so that's the whole story behind the cookie.
And that's why it's come out. Well, it sounds like the cookie needed to be created just to
Yeah,
save all that.
well,
Wow.
like IndyCar racing at the time to me felt like safer than the cookie, right?
Than having a
Because
snack.
I mean, I don't know. In my career, I was, like I had at that time when I started my IndyCar career, I had way more reactions close to death, than my racing,
The
when I
actual
started
driving.
in my IndyCar career. So anyway,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. I think that's the first time anyone's ever said that, obviously due to the condition you have. I mean, that's the first time we've ever heard someone being more worried about a cookie than like the Indy 500.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, once you have the reaction and you feel what it does, it's kind of drowning, but
Right.
without being able to do anything to try to fight to go up to reach air.
Yeah,
So
it's just
you're feeling like you're drowning, but
there's
you
nothing
don't
you can
even
do.
have the chance to fight to do anything
Yeah,
to go to the surface, because you know that it's not coming in. So
yeah.
it's pretty
Wow.
scary.
I can't imagine how scary that must be. Goodness me.
Yeah.
But no, at least we've got a safe snack now, which is good. No, that's cool. I mean, excuse me. Just yeah. I mean, obviously that's sort of more present, that kind of thing. But I always like to start kind of at the beginning whenever I speak with people on here, because everyone's got their own story and how they got involved and things like that. And I know yours is slightly kind of different in ways. But obviously you grew up sort of like Quebec, Montreal area in Canada. Where did your I mean, well, I think I know where your love of motorsport came from. It was in the family, wasn't it? But I mean, was it inevitable that you were going to somehow get involved with motorsport?
Well, I mean, saying that, it's kind of being very optimistic, because my father was a mechanic, and I was like I grew up in his garage, and I saw him working on race cars. I was in the paddock of races, local races, pretty much everywhere. I ended up being in the pit lane of a Formula One Grand Prix, very, very young. Gilles Villeneuve, became my idol. Ayrton Senna became my idol. I even, for a couple of years, I had, the helmet design of Ayrton Senna, and I ended up also having the Gilles Villeneuve one during an IndyCar race at Montreal. But I was in the paddock, like in front of his garage and watching Senna being the last driver in the garage. And I had a photo of my go-kart, that was, all decked out, the colors of the McLaren, fluorescent orange and white. And then with me, with my yellow helmet, with the blue and green stripe. And I was waiting for him to come out with his Marlboro jacket, puffy jacket, and sign this picture. And he stayed there so long when everybody else was gone. And he had his foot on the tire and he was talking to probably his engineer. And anyway, it basically really stayed with me for so long, just because, okay, as a kid, I was, he was my idol. But at the same time, I saw, his dedication, this superstar, being there, in the middle of a garage, still searching for probably some tenths of a second or finding some solutions. And that was something that, even today, look, I'm talking about it and it's really, stuck with me. And I lived those type of things with my father going to the races, right? And he was a mechanic. He was doing engine. He was preparing cars. He had like a team, not his team, but he was like subcontracted to use his garage and his expertise as a mechanic to prepare Porsche Rotman's Cup car when the series was running in Canada. And I mean, he's a genius, right? I mean, he's developed like these skills. He became a super duper engine builder for, go-kart engines. He was involved in karting for, 25 years, still involved, and prepared some snowmobiles and motors and stuff for the Villeneuves, and for Jacques specifically, when he was doing snowmobiling. So I had the chance as a kid to basically be around motorsport a lot. And, some of his drivers that were racing GT1, GT2, GT3 cars in those days, like in the local races, Tremblant, Montreal Circuit, Saint-Air, Shannonville, Mosport, all these places, I followed him. And I was the kid that pissed off everybody in the paddock because I had this stupid little mini moped. I think it was I think it was an Italian brand. It was Gerosa. And I was like flying in the paddock with this little moped. And at the end of the race, the only thing that I was looking for is try to jump into that open cage, no seat, no passenger seat, stick the checker flag into the roof of the car and hold the stick of the flag and do this, like a honored lap at the end of the race if one of his drivers would win the race. And as like when you're 10, 11, 12, you don't have the age to basically be in a pit lane, right? So underage, and I was like just sneaking into the pit lane somehow, jumping over fence and get right by the pit wall, and just before the car arrived to stop to grab the checker flag, I was always there to jump in the car, right? And so I was known to be that kid, and I know I pissed off a bunch of local officials throughout the years, because I was bending the rules. But anyway, so yeah, and then my grandfather ended up having to go back to Italy because he had like severe asthma, and the winter in Montreal was extremely tough on him. So he had to go back into a more tempered climate. And so at 10 years old, my father and my mom, they sent me to Italy to do a trip in the summer. Three was 2.5 months vacation for the summer break. And I ended up going there by myself, even also to learn to speak Italian. And anyway, the first thing that my grandfather does when he grabbed me at the Milan airport, we stop at the CRG factory that at the time was Calicart, and stuck a little, mini 60cc go-kart in the back of this Volkswagen hatchback car, and then we brought it home. So then this summer, I had my grandfather on the side of my father that had a shop, a bunch of race cars. He was still racing himself, doing like hill climbing races with different categories, different cars, himself preparing cars for other clients. And then on the side of my mom, my grandfather was an artist. He was doing painting and glasses, right? Acrylic glasses by hand. So you can see that, like at some point I was doing 1 week at one house, 1 week at another house, but then at some point I was doing like 3 weeks and 1 week, because that's where all the toys were, right?
Sure.
And at the end of the summer break, anyway, my grandfather, well, before that, my grandfather called my dad and said, listen, the kid is practicing at Rezzato, a track, and I think they were going to host the world championship in go-kart. And he said, look, there's top guys here and he's racing with them. Do you want me to register him? And
for the world championship.
Yeah. So my mom says, no way. I mean, I think we had to do like some sort of like documentations for license and things like that. And my parents are not there, like a race go-kart competition. Anyway, it was like, no way. So I ended up like being there as a spectator to see, but it pissed me off because I was like, man, I can be out there. I can be out there. I race with those guys. And I didn't have any experience. But anyway, nevertheless, at the end of the summer, my grandfather sent the go-kart by boat. And then when the go-kart arrived, it got stored in the garage at my family's house, and we had snow. And then the go-kart slept in the garage all winter long. And my father tells me this story where there's a time where he got into the garage and I was sleeping, sitting into the go-kart. And I probably changed stickers on that go-kart 7 times because I had nothing to do, right?
Sure.
And I think this for a kid that was 10 years old, watching this little go-kart that I drove in Italy a few months earlier, and that was there, you can imagine that the snow was not melting fast enough.
I'll bet. Yeah.
And then when the snow melt, then I start going out with my father in parking lots and school parking lots on weekend to let me drive, because here in Canada, we didn't have the categories that this go-kart was from Italy, right? They had a category for young kids between the age of 8 and 12, and the category in Montreal didn't exist. So I ended up only doing practicing and running around by myself. And that's how my go-kart experience, life things all started, right?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I'm just picturing you sitting there, just frustrated as hell because it cold, and obviously it's because like the winters you get are proper winters that you guys get there. We don't. It just rains here. I could just imagine you sitting there just waiting for the snow to go so you can get back out there, that's amazing.
And you realize that there's so much snow. Anyway, that winter there was so much snow that even when the weather is going to start getting nicer, well, you still have to wait for the snow to melt, right?
Sure.
To go down, to go anywhere. So yeah, I mean, it was as a kid, like it really doesn't compute, and you're losing patience.
Yeah, you're thinking, why isn't it melting? Come on,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I did see somewhere, excuse me, that your father, you kind of said that he was incredibly like mechanically minded, and he was fully focused on the engine of the kart rather than anything else. And he was quite sort of hard on you when you were racing. You had to start. Even if you were quick when you were racing, you still had to start at the back. He made you start at the back and told you not to overtake and things like that, didn't he?
Oh yeah, man. It's my father used. Well, I would say that my father was basically the one doing the things, but you have to also remember that because of my mom, we were able to do these type of things. So she accepted for us to leave on weekends. She was doing the lunch. She was kind of like the mom that accepted to sacrifice, basically her own time and her own activities to let, like the husband and the kid leave and have some fun on weekends at a go-kart track, right? But who operated these type of things was him. And he used the go-kart racing as part of my education. I mean, he was not the typical dad that was basically bringing me to a place and say, oh, you need to win a trophy. Let's win a race. Like for him, it was like, it started from the garage. So like he was, cleaning his motor, making it all nicely and neat. My job was to make sure that the chassis was ready to be able to receive the motor. If I was distracted and playing in the street with my friends and playing hockey, and he sees the chassis with a little bit of dirt and still some grease and not clean, well, the motor is not getting installed on the chassis, right?
Wow.
So Saturday morning, you wake up and the go-kart's nowhere near ready to go racing. So you stay home. It's like you're missing the race. Yeah, I mean, who cares? So it's not like the racing are happening and there's a schedule and the summer is so short and you're gonna miss a race. No problem. We stay home. I tell you, I didn't miss too many races because once that happened, the next time I start cleaning this baby like it was always brand new. I had this discipline of, cleaning the bearings, the axle, the chassis, WD-40 everywhere, checking the alignment. And without really asking too much, I realized as I was getting older, well, I'm pretty good with my hands. I can do this stuff. But the reason why I ended up doing this stuff is because I had no choice, right? And then what you were saying about starting last. So I was 12 years old, and the series here in Quebec decided to do the two-stroke Series 100cc. But for these small kids like me, where the 100cc was a category that adults were racing in, the weight limit was so high that for a kid of my age, I needed to put like almost 80 pounds on the go-kart. And it was like unsafe because if you put 80 pounds on the go-kart, it's the problem is it's not the fact that you're going to make it equal with the others. The problem is if you have an accident, you have an 80-pound plus go-kart that's going to fall on a smaller body, a smaller kid, right? So what they did is they because we were not enough, I think there was only 2 or 3 kids of our age, of our size, we ended up running with like a 19 millimeter restrictor on the carburetor versus a 24 mil, and we were allowed to run 345 pounds versus 385 pounds. And still at 345, we still end up having to put weight, but it was a lot less than if we had to basically be at 385. So there was like this, different categories, call it the junior, 12 years old, 13 years old, and 19 mil with a lighter weight. But we were racing with adults, right? Fields of 28, 30 go-karts. So I qualified second, and overall, by the way, like, mixed with everybody. So I was supposed to start on the front row of a 28 go-kart field with my little junior go-kart. And my father installed these fiberglass side pods, white side pods, because he didn't want to have the wheels getting in, because in the old days we only had like metal bars in between the tires, right? So anyway, so I'm ready to push my go-kart, and because it's a direct drive, you have like this handle with 2 wheels, and you lift the rear bumper and you push that onto the grid. And he goes, "Where are you going?" "Well, I'm going to front." And he goes, "No. He says, just park the cart here." I said, "This is last." And he goes, yeah, that's fine. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? And he just sit in the cart and start concentrating. So I sit in the go-kart, and we're about like maybe like 1 minute from being pushed and go. And he comes beside my visor and he says, "Listen, look at me and only start passing when you see me say go." And I kid you not. I mean, people that know me and know my father, they remember his clothing that he was wearing at the track. And he had this Pirelli, not jacket, but like apron, this Pirelli apron, black with Pirelli yellow written, there, right? He just was wearing it because all his tools were going into the front pocket, right? And he looked funny anyway. But so he had this Pirelli apron, and he has his hand on his waist, and I just go by the pit lane after the start, and he's like this, no sign. And I'm like, what is going on? What am I doing? Like, just watching everybody race in front of me like a moron.
Why can't I pass anyone? You know.
So then I go back on the second lap, and when all the craziness of the start, basically, calmed down, I can see his face, and he goes like this, right, from the pit lane. And then I'm like, beep, like the wires, man, they got touched, and I was like completely wired up, and I was like, this guy is insane. He's making me lose my time to be here. And so anyway, that race, I drove with more aggressivity, with more intensity. I had the knife between my teeth, right? So I drove better than when I qualified. I drove better than the rest of the weekend, because there was no incentive. Like the rest of the weekend, I was basically doing what I could do and what the go-kart could do. But when you put some incentives in front of you, and the challenge of getting back to where you were, all of a sudden I got wired up. And anyway, I remember that I even realized when we drove back home that was the triggering factor that made me have something come out that was not coming out before. So he knew that, he got it out of me. But then I finished the race, and I'm like, man, I finished second. I could have fought for the win. I got all the way back up there. And so he looked at me, and he looked at the rear brake disc. And, in those days, there was like some gravel, and the asphalt was like, maybe 2 inches higher than the exit. So if you put the left tire off track, the rear brake disc is going to touch on the asphalt, and you're going to grind the top, right?
Oh, right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So he noticed that I put 2 wheels off in one corner, and then the wheel dropped down and the brake disc grinded. And he just, basically gave me some shit about going off with one wheel and completely disregarding the fact that I just went through 27 go-karts, right? And focused on that stupid brake disc that was grinded, right? And that's the only thing that he was focused on. And I was like, man, look, I'm 12, right? So I'm thinking, like, this dude is just out of control, man.
You could have must have been thinking, I can't do anything right here.
It's crazy. But anyway, long story short, to his defense, he's my father, he knew that there was no way for me that he was going to be able to take a checkbook and sign a check and basically put me into the world of racing, right? So his own way of I don't know, preparing me either mentally or preparing me in life of maybe the good that could happen or the bad that could happen, for him was like, that was his way, without never saying it out loud, was his way of saying, I'm going to try to prepare him, of some of the challenges that he will face, and some of the yes and no answers that he will get when he will want to go and pursue, because there's no way the family is going to be able to put the money first, right? It's going to be some support, and at some point that support is going to end. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy now these days to say, because of the finished product, say, okay, all of this helped and, makes you love the whole situation. But, it could have gone both ways, right? I mean, I end up having no chance, no ride, and all these tricks would have not served, me to go into world of racing. But I think what they would have done in a way is to just prepare me mentally at the worst that could have happened, right? And for me at that time, the worst that could have happened is not being able to have a life in the world of racing as a race car driver, So, at the end of the day, that's what I also say to the kids sometimes. kids come to me and say, or parents, they say, what can you say? What can you suggest? What is your advice? My kid wants to race. And I say, listen, if your kid is prepared to work and sacrifice 85% of the time for 15% of fun, then he's good. But if the 85% is about being in a go-kart and having fun driving, I'm telling you, he's better change sport right now, because
it's not going to work.
I mean, it's not like the sport that we know. Like, our national sport here in Canada is hockey, right? If you ask a hockey player to take $2 million and go sign a check to the GM of the team to give himself a job on the right wing or at the center, he's going to say, before I put the jersey and the skates to go on the ice, you pay me $2 million. And then even when you need my time for other PR promotion, it's going to be X amount of dollar per day, right?
It's going to cost
This is
more.
this is the way the sport is made. But when you start in racing, like all these teams with these owners, they have cars that are ready, and sometimes, some of the good rides are taken, right? They have long-term guys. They have like guys who sign for 5 years, 6 years. And if you are not prepared to do that route, to go that route, then your career will pass you by, and you'll be waiting for the ultimate ride that ends up opening up that, the timing is bad, right? So
yeah, it might not happen.
So you mentally, I think he definitely helped me quite a bit to basically go through some of the challenges that I was going to end up having anyway in life.
Yeah, it feels like it was like a very clever way of preparing you for how like we all know life is. Things don't always go your way, and you should be prepared for that. That's
and I'm telling you, we looked weird. We looked like a little duo that was very weird. First of all, our equipment was like very, very modest, but we were fast. I mean, he was like such a great mechanic and great mind, so I had really good equipment. But like everybody was looking at us and say, what is this guy doing, right? I mean, even these days, like 30 years later, you go to a go-kart race, there is no way in a million years that someone is going to go to a track and is going to purposely start last to basically learn the gig, right? I mean, everybody is there and they are just going for the plastic trophy, right?
Yeah. It's all about results and
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and some of these plastic trophies that I ended up having in go-karting, I don't even know where they are. And for so long, they ended up taking spaces in boxes in storage. So they were actually more annoying than anything else.
They were, the good of didn't really need them. No, wow, that's I just love that approach, isn't it? It's this is what it's like, so let's get used to it now, type thing. Which is cool. I've just seen a few comments coming in talking about IndyCar and mentioning about Dan Weldon. We'll come to that, guys, of course. Just sort of, obviously, and he did that a few times, didn't he? It was starting from the back and learning how to race in the pack rather than just driving off out the front and everything. And it kind of stood you in good stead for when you moved up to cars. But the obvious question here is of financing and money and all that kind of stuff. It was an issue then. It was an issue before. It's an issue now. Because you did a couple of races in Formula Ford or a season in Formula Ford and then moved up from there, didn't you?
Yeah, so I had to do a couple of races in Formula Ford because I needed my signature for like a future license, right? So some of the things that I've done, they were done because even though I wanted to go passing three steps into the ladder system, you needed a license, right? So you need a certain number of races under your belt. So the Formula Ford was the same, right? When we ended up having to go race Formula Ford, because that was the first category that would have got you your signature on your pro license. So finding a 16-foot trailer, finding a sponsor that could basically lend me a car, and then without the budget to be able to sustain the race to race, with my father's garage, we were basically working on our own car and finding a $5,000 sponsor to basically purchase tires and fuel and like not even the expenses, but literally, like working on the car ourselves, and basically borrowing some equipment, to put the car on scale and to do the setup, and then bringing it to the racetrack. So, making calls, asking some favors, and, some of friends that we had, like, they were coming with us to be the mechanic on that weekend and to be helping changing tires and all that. So even at the level of Formula Ford, we were racing Formula Ford the way we were going go-karting, right? I mean, it was like literally us, the two of us, with, few friends that joined, the little club. And then, my father, like on a Friday, he would basically stay very late at his garage after the week of work and, prepare the setup, prepare the car, prepare everything with me and some friends. And then Saturday morning, we had it loaded up and we were heading to the races, right? So it was, it was still so much good memories. And my mom, coming from home with the dinner and in Tupperware and bringing the dinner at the garage, and all of a sudden me sleeping at, midnight, in the trailer, on the floor of the trailer, because I was like too tired and I needed to get rest for the next day of running. So it's, man, the time that I spent there in that garage was like insane. Every time my mom would pick me up after school, basically Friday, boom, first thing, drop me at the garage. Anyway, she was doing accounting for my father, so she had to go there anyway. So I was there.
Wow. I mean, and we've heard that sort of story from a few drivers where, it became, it was just the way life was, it was just putting in the hard hours just to, to get out there, to be able to go racing.
Well, I mean, even in the next level, in Formula Atlantic, when I said to people around me, it's about, like 800,000 US, $1 million US to go race in Formula Atlantic. So they're like, whoa. So basically I scrapped $250,000. And part of that $250,000 was not on even all sponsorship. What I had to do is I had to do benefit dinner. So I would sell ticket and I would exchange a room and a big dinner with like a bunch of people that would pay X amount of money. And then because I had the deal with the room, there was like a leftover, from the sale of the tickets that was there. And then to raise the amount of money that night, instead of getting like free flights, I was getting like free trip from a travel agency. And I was like basically selling coupons for raffle of wheels, tires, traveling, trips, airplane, hotels, things like that. And I could raise up to $25,000, $30,000, in a benefit dinner to add onto the sponsorship that I was basically able to raise. And anyway, I did that season, in Formula Atlantic for $250,000 for a very small team. And I remember my mother, she gave me like a credit card, and there was like $1,500 on the credit card. So basically plane and rental cars. So no hotels, because the card was loaded, right? So, and then when I come back home, I had 3 jobs, and I was basically helping to pay those $1,500 that was on the card, right? But so I get to Laguna Seca, and there's no way I'm gonna go into a hotel that weekend. Man, the rooms are $400 a night. So in that whole area, right, it was like super expensive. And so anyway, I just slept in my car. I brought like a sleeping bag into the hauler of the team. And then when I arrive at the track with my rental car, I go to the truck, I pick up my sleeping bag so I don't have to carry it with me in the plane. And then I just slept in the car, and I see all these $1 million motorhomes arriving at the track, and me, little schmuck, basically sleeping in my little, like compact car, at the track, and waking up the next day and being a Formula Atlantic driver is like, I mean, there's stories that I can't even say all the stuff that I've done to basically raise money. I mean, everything was good at that time. I was like so desperate that, I was willing to do anything.
Wow, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, even from the outside looking in, even at that level, or like in Formula 4 we have over here, and GB4 and things like that, the like the lower level on the ladder, we think, oh yeah, they're going racing and it costs some money, but that's a cool way to live. You get to go racing, and you don't see all that kind of stuff that you have to do. Sleeping in the car and scraping for every penny and all the other things. I just love that, because you're racing in Formula Atlantic, which is a decent series. It's a step up from Formula Ford. And I just love that. You can always tell the ones who are desperate to go racing and the ones who really want it. Because like guys like you go through that kind of a thing. But as I said, you got into Formula Atlantic, which is like slicks and wings. I guess first time you'd done that.
But I'm telling you, like it seems like, oh my God, I mean, why would you do all that? Well,
yeah.
really, when these type of things are done and they're in your back pocket, I think after that, what really makes it all worth is, I mean, you arrive at the GP3R weekend where you grew up and seeing all these F1 drivers and Atlantic drivers and the players racing team, and you win that race, and you go to Montreal, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, during like a F1 weekend, and you win on Canadian soil, and you win at your home, and just all of a sudden, all these things are forgotten pretty quickly, like all the sleeping bags and like sleepless nights and all that. So it's quite easy to get like addicted and quite caught up in what you're doing and not really looking at it from a logical perspective and say, man, this is insane, because you're just, at some point something's going to come back at you and you're going to go, man, I keep going.
Yeah.
So
It's
it
like
never
something
stops.
happens and you think this is worth it. This is worth doing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that and you mentioned like winning at home and on the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. I had a quick look through the results. You kind of seem to do well on ovals and on street circuits. You seem to be pretty strong on those, and you took a podium, I think, at like one of those, the first podium, despite not being in the best car in Formula Atlantics. Do you think those? I think running strongly on street circuits and ovals, which are a big part of the IndyCar world, do you think that kind of put you in the shop window for?
I don't know. I mean, I was, my first win in Atlantic came at the Long Beach Grand Prix.
Cool.
I won in Montreal. I won in GP3R. I was good in Nazareth. I was quite quick in Milwaukee on the oval too. I was on the pole, I think, in Mid Ohio, and I lost the championship when I broke an half shaft in Mid Ohio, and
late in the race.
Yeah, exactly. So that championship in Formula Atlantic slipped between my finger at that race when the Lynx Racing team took it, and I finished third. From mechanical DNF. I don't know if it's just that got me a spot, because honestly, when we went to Sebring to test the IndyCar, and Greg signed for Penske in '99. He was leaving the team. The team organized a test, and Steve Chalice was the engineer, and these guys did a pretty crazy test, I have to say. Greg, obviously there was like Greg's setup, Patrick's setup. Nobody knew what setup it was, but
that was Patrick, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He was teammate with Greg.
Yeah.
And they did some tricks on the car. They changed the setup. They maybe took some aero out or changed springs and things like that. And instead of being a test where you get used to the car and then you try to go fast and show how fast you are with the car they give you, they really took it to the next level and basically messed up the car a bit. And with the supervision of Neil Mickelwright, that was the team manager there, they were asking drivers for their feedback, right? So at some point, yeah, I don't know. It's what I heard afterwards. But what was really impressive was that I was giving feedback on some understeer that was in the car, and to me, I relate to that understeer being more linked to aerodynamic, lack of downforce than mechanically,
rather than mechanical.
because some of the understeer that was happening in the car came at some corners where I was basically saying, well, the front wing is not going to fix my understeer there, but it could fix me my understeer there.
Right.
So where I have the most amount of understeer and the most amount of lack of pace is maybe fast speed corner. So I was willing to push the car in the fast speed corner with the wheel cranked and see the weakness of the car, and the weakness was way greater in a higher speed corner than in a slow speed corner. So my feedback was understeer more related to aero than mechanical.
Right.
But if you, I don't know, like, and it was in my younger sorry, it was in my younger years of experience of racing. But really, if you arrive in a corner and the car pushes like hell into a slow speed corner, but you're already pinned in the front, in a fourth gear corner, don't request for aero, because man, the high speed corner is gonna scare you, right? I mean, you're gonna loop it, right? And so for me, it was like I was really focused a lot during my driving, during the test, to analyze all this stuff, right? And over the 2-day test, I brought up, a bunch of different comments that I think impressed, the coach, impressed the team manager, impressed, the engineer and the data guy, that saw a bunch of information, right? I mean, they told me that they mess up with the COP, the center pressure, and the car really didn't want to turn in the high speed corner if the car was a bit lower than that amount of COP.
Right.
And they found out with their regular driver. And as soon as the COP dropped in my car, I basically right away pinpoint aerodynamically issues, having aerodynamic problems. So they were impressed with those type of feedbacks and comments. And I think that really was the factor that made the difference, because I think all the guys that tested were very quick. We were strong, but that made the difference. And yeah, so, and I always been quite technical, and I always trusted my butt. When I'm in a car, it doesn't really take me long, to feel what happens. I just leave the pit lane, and like I'm driving on the straightaway, I feel something going on in the car. So
Yeah.
I trusted that, and it paid off dividends, when I ended up having to do that test.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously they knew, rather than giving you the best car they could and say, right, go and show us what you can do, they basically were playing with it and changing things and seeing where your feedback was, which is sneaky, but obviously it's the best way to do it, isn't it? I mean, because they're saying, well, these guys can obviously drive, they're obviously quick. Let's throw some hurdles in their way, and obviously it's how you relay it back to them. I mean, were you aware that it was essentially essentially like a test or like a competition almost for the seat that Greg Moore had?
Oh, I knew it was
You knew
that.
it.
I knew,
Yeah.
because we knew that Greg was leaving, and after the test, not long after the test, when I received the phone call and they told me I got the ride, we basically did the contract, fairly quick, and then ended up like flying to Fontana, to support the team for the last race, because I was going to be the driver next year, and was Greg's last race, so so it's I knew it. I knew the all the reasoning behind the test, so I was aware of the of the outcome of that test for sure.
Yeah, you kind of knew the deal. And obviously, but I'm just imagining, I mean, obviously all those, all that frustration with karting and your dad and everything and starting at the back and then Atlantics with all this, with the scrapping for money and all that kind of a thing. When you signed with players, which was like Forsyth Racing, wasn't it? It was a big team, like Jacques had like driven for them and won the championship with them and all that. What was it like? I mean, you must have thought, oh my God.
Yeah, I didn't sign for enough money, I tell you that, because I was, I was, yeah, I was always in a desperate mode. In my life, it was, those weeks of wait for that phone call if you got the ride were just unbearable. I thought that it was the end of the world if I didn't get like a positive phone call. And then when the phone call came, like for me, like I couldn't care less about the money. At that particular time, I would have drove for free, right? I mean, I would have said, yeah, I'm coming, like just, whatever, I'm happy to be in the car. So, I never been probably like following the footstep of my father. Not a very good business savvy guy, more of a, passionate, always do things with passion and less brain, just from I mean, it's just from the fact that you don't have many other options, right? I mean, I mean, all these type of things in your past are following you, right? So every year you keep accumulating the sacrifice and maybe not, maybe not, and so it's I mean, even the jobs that I had, some of my friends gave me jobs. I was printing, during the day. I was working in a grocery store in the middle of the night. And then when the casino opened at the Montreal Grand Prix island, I was doing security at the casino. I was letting people in. So I was basically floating from one job to another, racing, going at school. Sometimes, I mean, in college, I was studying in civil engineering, and we were basically studying, like strength of concrete and doing tests on concrete tubes. And I would show up there with my slick pants, my shirt tucked in my pants with my business jacket, because I came from a sponsorship pitch, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
And everybody else, is like
jeans and t-shirts.
Jeans and t-shirts. And, like I really didn't play the part, but I was basically trying to do so much at the same time that at some point when I got accepted at university to keep going into, mechanical engineering, I just physically, I had to say, like, either I give myself a year of I push, and I just will live with no regrets that I did everything I could to find the money to go racing, or I try to do too much and nothing happens. But then one day I will wake up and I will have regrets, and then I'm gonna freak out. So I just basically became like a salesman of sponsorship and, basically navigated myself, and it turned out. But, it was a lot of moments where there was doubts for sure.
Oh, yeah, I'll bet. Wondering which direction to take and which is going to pay off. But I guess, if you want to be a racer and you've done the racing in the past, you've got to take a chance on it. And you can always go back to, the normal world, as it were, if need be. And obviously, and it all came together. Obviously, you're now a professional IndyCar driver. One thing we have to mention, I mean, you said that when you'd signed the deal, this was for 2000. Greg Moore had signed for Penske. You were at Fontana when obviously the accident happened with Greg. And we've all seen it, and we all wish we hadn't, because it was an awful accident, wasn't it? And I mean, what was going through your mind? Because obviously you knew you were going to be in the car. I guess we all knew at the time that it was a really bad one. Um, where were you watching from, and how did it all play out for you? When did you find out that he'd passed away? And because it must have been an awful, it's like the worst possible introduction to IndyCar.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was. I was there as a young guy, just try to make it, and I was there in the paddock, and I mean, look, the Penske team is there with like Gilles de Ferran and like Elio Castroneves and Dario Franchitti, Paul Tracy, all these big names are there, and Mark Blundell, and so I'm there. I'm a schmuck. I mean, I literally, like, I'm a little dude from Montreal, Quebec, and I'm there, and I just hold my ground. And the thing that was crazy is that weekend, so it was like a Halloween weekend, and Greg basically fell from his scooter and he broke his wrist, right?
Yeah.
So I'm there, and right away, Neil McElwright says, there is no way you jump in the car, right? Until you have done super speedway testing and all that, like, just chill, right?
Yeah.
So they're basically bringing Roberto Moreno in for I think subbing him, and Greg doesn't want to. He just wants to drive the final race, right? Look, I'm just gonna go by memory real quick, but
Yeah.
I think Greg was 11th in the championship or something like that, or and there was like no incentives, right, to basically do that race.
Right.
I think he signed a pretty big contract at Penske for 5 years, I think. And anyway, he goes and gets his cast on, and I see the whole scene, right, happening. I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I mean, this is pretty. And I see the cars on track, the speeds they were going, like broken wrist, with a cast, need to drive a 500-mile race with a cast on his hand. And in the days, remember, we didn't have like paddle shift, right? It was like sequential gearbox, so you had to basically, to downshift, on start, restarts, coming into the pits and all that with, one good end. I was questioning it.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, right? And I was like, man, I mean, this. So, and even Pat, he's like, during the weekend, he goes, I don't know why Greg is doing it, man. It's like, I don't know. So anyway, he has to start last, right? Because I think he went to go for his cast on the Saturday. So he starts last, and 11 laps into the race, he loses controls of the car, and then after even some comments on the issue with the dirt and the grass, and on the infield, right? Well, all of a sudden, the wreck ended up exactly where some people have made comments on the grass, blah, 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 blah. So, like, as you see, it was like, just like a weird kind of like a thing, because when the situation happens, you're like, this is the guy that broke his wrist on, this is the guy that got his cast, this is the guy that signed his contract, this is the guy that was on his way out, and then he's involved in that huge wreck. And so, I mean, when they replay it, it didn't really look good. So if you're a race car driver and you see the wreck, you can personally, inside of you, imagine the force and the G forces. So you already know that it doesn't really look good.
Sure.
So a lot of people didn't have really good faces, and they didn't. I don't know. I mean, it was not good.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it's just a pretty shitty weekend, for the introduction, and it was. It was. I think Pat took it pretty bad. and then because I was part of the team players racing in Atlantic for them, like I ended up spending a lot of time with Greg and him and other drivers that were part of that program, because when we were going to Toronto, for racing in Atlantic, the IndyCar was there. When we were going in Vancouver, the IndyCar was there. So it was like the whole, players, Atlantic, Indy Lights, IndyCar, and
All together.
we were like Greg and Pat and myself, we were kind of jokers, and we were playing tricks on each other and pranks and at the hotels and things like that. So like when this happens, like you feel it's almost unreal, like the guy that basically played trick on my hotel room, at the Western Harbor Castle in Toronto with Pat and like all the crazy stuff he did, like you're like, man, is it for real that the guy's gone? So it was not like a really nice way of basically starting your career in racing, and basically being there, because I was announced, I think I don't remember, I think on the Tuesday of the race weekend, I was announced as the driver. So I was there just
that week.
Yeah, that week, So
Wow.
I was there, and this happens, then, I mean, when you go home, like you have to face, like, I mean, you're basically, you're talking to your parents, and you cannot say, you cannot not talk about that. You can't avoid that, like you're gonna end up starting your career in a sport where someone just died. So around the table, you're gonna have to talk about it, right? You can't say, well, it's gonna be all peachy and great, and it's all good, there's no risk in there, so it was kind of like, for a while, it was like not a fun thing, and especially because Greg was really well recognized as a Canadian driver. So then when you're in a team based out of not based out of Canada, but the sponsor is based out of Canada, he came out of that program and all that. I mean, it's going to be around you for a long time. It's not going to go away quickly. So it was definitely not a good thing.
No, absolutely, and he's like famous for the red gloves, and there's still drivers out there now who have red gloves, don't they, in tribute to him. And he was going to be the next big Canadian sort of star of motorsport, wasn't he? It was a real shame what happened, and an awful way to do it. And I can't imagine how difficult it was for you and your family. Obviously, you're not only going into the sport for the first time, you're going into that seat, and
Yes.
that must have been incredibly difficult. But thank you for talking about it. I mean, onto I guess happier things. I mean, you went into the team 2000, made your debut. Was it obviously Homestead, wasn't it? Miami, completely different, car to the Atlantics. I mean,
but you know what?
You've
what was
skipped the
crazy
lights.
there in Homestead? What was crazy is I started my first race in Homestead, and I qualified fourth. And
wow.
So anyway, I start the race. Anyway, I fight with the Farron, and all of a sudden I found a way into the lead, and I'm in the lead, and there's a yellow flag.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm really unfamiliar with with all the ruling, and Jerry Forsyth was on my radio, and so I come into the decel lane inside turn 3 and 4, and the pace car's on the racetrack, and so between the entry of the decel lane in turn 3 and the pit limiter, maybe at the exit of turn 4, at the entry of the pit lane, there's a huge kind of like gap, right? And so I'm in the lead. So I don't find myself, and it's the first race, first time, and I don't find myself following another car. So now the pace car stays on the track, and he was running at 60 miles an hour. And now I know that when we're pitting, on the green, you're not running 60 miles an hour in that lane. You're running, as fast as you can until basically pit in, right? So now I'm 60. The pace car is on the track. I'm in the decel lane, and I'm questioning myself, like, should I go? Because I have Paul Tracy behind me, and if I'm sleeping, these guys are just gonna blow my knee in the decel lane, and I'm gonna end up in the pit in, and I'm gonna lose position. So I just get on the radio right away and ask, if I can accelerate in the decel lane. And Jerry goes, go, 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 go. And so basically I was one speed, and then I start accelerating and I went, right? So I ended up literally arriving at the blend line before the pace car arrived at the blend line. And I literally passed him, even though I was not on the racing surface, I was on the decel lane, it was considered a pass, right? So I got a penalty and I went from the lead to last. And, I had to fight back to finish ninth. But apparently it was the exact thing that happened to Greg Moore on his first race at Miami. Same situation. And I'm like, what's
wow.
Same thing, And now I start like being spooked out a bit, and and then there was also the old issue about the numbers, right? So when I was racing in Formula Atlantic, I was number 66, and man, I had like so much DNF, also lost the championship because of like I said, a mechanical failure. And as soon as Pat said, there's no way I'm going to continue with number 33, I want to be switched to number 32. So because I didn't want 66, right, they give me 33. 32, 33 in the car, right? And anyway, like that old story about number, I'm telling you, it will basically like you'll get goosebumped out of that. But anyway, so Greg, in 1999 had his accident with number 99.
99,
yeah. And 11 laps into the race. Dan Weldon had his accident, number 77, 11 laps into the race, 2011, right? And on 9/11 weekend in Germany, there's a huge crash.
Yeah, we'll come to
And who are the two cars involved? Number 33 and 66.
And 66. My God.
Yeah. And,
I hadn't ever thought that. Wow.
So.
Wow.
Anyway,
that's weird.
Yeah, it's weird, very weird, and all this stuff happens, and I start, and it was, I don't remember who it was, but anyway, there's this journalist at the Road America track when I won the race, and he said to me, do you know that it's the 8th day of the 8th month? You're the 8th driver to win his first race. Is the 8th round of the championship, and you're number 8. So, so anyway, like he said that at the press conference, and then after that, like he basically gave me the entire story of all the numbers and stuff, right?
Wow.
And it stuck with me.
Yeah.
And anyway, when we talked about that story, anyway, to me personally, like, this is my humble opinion, I don't think that if you're running a double-digit number, you're gonna have like bad luck. But I just think that these things ended up happening in moments where maybe potentially we could have avoided them. And like the connection with the parallel of the numbers, maybe whoever looks at that and finds that, will say, oh yeah, I can see that maybe there was a way of avoiding these type of things, right? The Weldon crash was like was crazy because I always will remember Ilio and Tony coming out of the media room after practice number 1 and saying, what are we doing here, right? I mean, we were running like 4 or 5 wide, in practice, being able to go nowhere, like with the amount of turbulence that there was at the time and all that stuff. And, boom, wreck. like we've seen so many things in our, like those days, those cars, like you can ask any drivers, but the kart car with the horsepower we have, with the downforce we had, with the tire we had, I mean, on some super speedway when we didn't have the Enford device, I mean, these cars were like missiles. They were like rocket ships, right? And and there was times where like we had no business being there. Can you imagine going to Texas Motor Speedway and doing 241 mile an hour average speed, okay, by the way, on a 1.49 mile racetrack where Indianapolis is 2.5 mile
It's
long,
2.5.
right?
Yeah.
And like at Las Vegas, the track is small too. It's a 1.5 mile track, right? It's a 1.5 mile track. And they took 34 cars, and Dan was the 34th car, right?
Yeah. Because he took your car, didn't he?
Yeah, the
He
super
took yours.
speedway car. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, it was like all these situations, right? I mean, at Texas, they canceled the race. They canceled the race because we were literally passing out, right? They sent us out. Me and Pat, we went out. We qualified 6th and 7th, and they sent us out to do a long run with full tanks of fuel. And in those days, the tanks were so big. We had 35 gallons of fuel. The car was heavy. You needed to raise the ride height because it was banging on the ground, and low tire pressure and all that. So we went do a long run. We did 25 laps, and I was behind Pat, and I was flat out for the entire 25 laps, and there was nowhere I could go. I was in his tow, but I mean, in Texas Motor Speedway, the pit lane is in front of the dog leg, and you can't hide, right? And with all the data that the teams have, drivers don't lie. If you lift, you lift. If you don't lift, you don't lift, and you say the truth because they're gonna see it on the data. Yeah. But me, like after 25 laps, I come into the pits and I say to the team, "Man, we need to trim the car. I have too much downforce. Pat is pulling away from me. He gained 10 car length over the long run." But what happened is that the team saw the entire long run, and I was nose to tail. My nose was in his gearbox. But I just said to the team that he's 10 car in front of me. So the manager says, "Okay, get out of the car." So, because, I mean, what's happening? Are you lying? Are you not seeing with your own eyes? What's going on here? Yeah, because we see that you spend 25 laps with your nose underneath his rear wing. So I come out of the car and I try to grab the timing stand post with my hand, and I literally missed it, right? So I stumbled about, and then I look around to make sure nobody saw me, stumbled back. I sit on the pit wall, and it was like, I felt like spinning, right? So Pat sees that I'm not there, his wingman is not there to do the long run test. So he comes into the pits, and we're parked nose to tail. He comes out of the car, and we are parked, left, right of the pit wall. The pit lane is going this way. So he jumps out of the cockpit on the left side, and he literally passes in front of his nose and my rear wing, and he's trying to cross the pit lane, going onto the grass and going onto the front straightaway.
He's going the wrong way. He's what?
So his crew chief grabs him by the shoulder and turns him around and points him towards the pit lane and basically brings him back before he crosses the pit lane. And then I look to my right, and I see him sitting on the pit wall, and he's basically going like this with his helmet and his hands of ice on.
Oh, kind of rocking.
Like rocking. I'm like,
what is that?
I'm like, what is going on? And like us drivers, we're not gonna start saying, "Oh, I feel bad, I feel sick, I don't see very well." You're not really saying anything. You're just basically keeping everything for yourself. So, and then all of a sudden, like I talked to one of my mechanic, and he's saying, "Have you seen TK?" And I was like, "No." He's throwing up in the back of the pit lane. So
is this like G-forces or?
It was like so in the drivers' meeting, what we found out is that after they analyzed the G-force log from the car, they said that when some of the engineers, at NASA analyzed the box, they realized that we were pulling, in the excess of 6 Gs laterally and 5.5G in compression. So when you're pulling these two G's on two different axes, lateral and vertical, it messes up something in your ear that basically create balance. And the other thing too is that because the straightaway were so short and you were always back into the corner with that sort of like compression G, the blood was basically going down into your legs, no way to come back up. And because it's not a track where it's physically demanding, but it's not physically demanding like a street course. So your heart rate might not be fast enough to bring the blood back into your brain. So depending on the individual, you'll have, you'll basically black out, from lack of blood, tunnel vision, because of the equilibrium that this little thing in your ear does for all these reasons, right? So anyway, we were in the meeting, and I remember that good gentleman crashed in turn 2, and his car stopped in turn 4. So no, I kid you not. So
because of the speed he was carrying.
Yeah, he wrecked outside of turn 2, and basically the tub stopped outside of turn 4.
Jeez.
And that was an extremely lucky crash, because in a way, the fact that the car didn't stop there, it saved his life, because the G-force and the impact got reduced because it got dispersed over a long period of time. So the short deceleration never happened because the car flew and slid on the wall.
Because that was the issue with Kenny Brack, wasn't it? The car it stopped really quick with Kenny.
Yeah, it decelerated like by a lot of kph in a short period of time, right? So anyway, they had to cancel the race, and finally, they canceled the race, and we went home because the engine manufacturers didn't want to reduce their boost. Nobody was prepared or had the equipment to basically, or wanted to put, extra downforce on the car to basically lose 20, 30 kph, average speed on the lap and things like that. So canceled the race. We went home, and I always will say that, that day we saved another guy, Yeah, because it was like pretty insane.
And that makes it even more strange. I mean, I know it was a $5 million challenge and everything with like Fontana, given what had happened at Texas. There was like warning signs, and you guys were obviously saying that's what was happening at Las Vegas when obviously we lost Dan. But I mean, knowing that now, it feels like there's no way that race should have happened. Surely.
Look,
I can see why it happened, but
like I will say something that maybe might not please people, but
go for it.
It's look, we're heading into Las Vegas, right? And Willpower is in fighting the championship with Dario Franchitti.
With Dario, yeah.
So those two teams, Ganassi and Penske, ended up, working so hard during the season to basically put themselves in that position, right?
Sure.
And same thing for the two drivers, and all of a sudden, our focus is not onto the final round and crowning a champion, is on someone that's going to start last and it's going to win the race.
Sure.
All this circus on someone that's going to start 34th when they only take 33 cars at Indianapolis, that the track that is a mile longer. And now we're going to run 34 car, and the 34th car is going to start last. And if he wins a race, there's like a $5 million bonus. Half is going to go to a fan, and half is going to go to the team. And, I know we're in Las Vegas and the gambling city, but literally, like, what do you think? The other 33 drivers are schmucks? They do let it happen. And what about the other two guys that are there fighting for the championship? All of a sudden, there's a huge circus, and all the attention is all around one dude that's gonna go last. And like it's every driver is going to accept a ride. And then that year, he was the Indianapolis 500 winner.
Yeah, he won it. Yeah.
So because they couldn't get like Kimi Räikkönen, and they couldn't get Kyle Busch, and they couldn't get all these guys to jump into good teams, and bring extra cars to do that. You know, like the last minute idea was like to take the Indianapolis 500 winner and to put him up to that task, right? So, you know, as a driver, you're not going to say, oh, I get an offer to go race, I don't know, Spa-Francorchamps with Formula One. Oh, no, because it's Spa. Let me start at Monza instead. You know, if the deal is the deal, you're gonna do it, right?
Then you got to take it. Sure.
So it's just, it was like, to me, it was a little bit disrespectful towards Penske and towards Ganassi and towards the two drivers that were, you know, basically fighting for the championship. So this entire promotional gig, to me, had no business to being there, right? You know, nevertheless, no business being on that specific track, right? In the same fashion that we had no business probably being racing in Texas, you know, with those cars when we showed up there and we were doing 241 mile an hour average. But it took some engineering analyzing to say, yeah, you guys might have, you know, like the heart in the right place, but physically speaking,
you can't.
No one is going to be able to survive, because between 25 and 35 laps, they basically projected that guys were going to have like bad symptoms and pass out.
Wow.
And I have to basically, you know, and I stayed friends and in contact with Michael Andretti. And, you know, Michael was racing in the series in those days. And I will remember that day. I don't have the status of Michael Andretti, right? I'm a nobody in that meeting room. But Michael stand up and said, I'm done. I'm not racing in that race. You know, if you guys are willing to launch that race, you know, like, it's going to be some repercussion, right? Wow. So basically, it was Michael that, you know, basically start making people think and say, okay, you know, maybe we have to rethink our thing here. And so lucky that he was there, because, you know, with his statement, like I said, we did the right thing and we went on, because there was so many ideas that were launched. You know, oh, let's throw a competition yellow on lap 25. Every 25 laps, let's throw some.
Like do it in stages, like NASCAR type.
Yeah. I'm like, oh man. And then, you know, like, so, you know, I was talking to other drivers, you know, and you know, in practice one, you know, my engineers says to me, hey man, you know, why are you not playing with your weight jacker, and why are you not changing the sway bar? You know, I'm like, man, I have no time to basically take my hands off the wheel. I mean, the dog leg in the front of the track, these two kinks in front of the front straightaway were actually pretty on the limit, right? You know, and when you're catching a toe, I think, like, if my memory serves me right, when we were catching a toe, I think on the back straightaway, we were, I don't know, 260 mile an hour top speed. I was like, the corner was happening so fast, those between the last dog leg and turn one. I mean, you were literally like using all the road, and the turning point was not easy when you were basically running not trim, but, you know, half trim. Yeah. Oh yeah, when we throw in some downforce for race condition, it was different, but still, then the problem will be the turbulence and the multiple car around you, and the lack of air. So
suction, yeah.
It was I mean, we you know, guys, I mean, when I saw the guys at Mexico City for the Formula One Grand Prix, and we did that sports car race, I had some pretty good chat with Max and Oriol and PT and Mark, you know, and some of the guys were the same opinion. I mean, it was just wild. You know, some of those races were wild, especially because the way the cars were, right? So
yeah.
Wow,
that's crazy, and it just, you know, and 260 in the toe. I mean, my God. I mean, I think the only time I've ever been that fast is in a plane. You know, I can't imagine going that far. I mean, that's incredible, and in the cars as well. Just quickly though, I did see a comment actually earlier on came in forgive me, it was from a guy called Simon Steele. He says, "What are your greatest memories about Dan Weldon?" Because obviously, we're all Brits over here, and we all followed him over to IndyCar. He was, Dario was there, and like Nigel had been out there, and he obviously won the Indy 500 in the most amazing circumstances. Obviously, with JR hitting the wall, and it's the only time that I've ever cheered at someone's misfortune, and it wasn't at JR Hildebrand hitting the wall. It was obviously because Dan had won the 500, and it was great. Brit had won it, but do you have any nice little memories of Dan that you kind of take? Because I'm not going to talk about the accident. I've spoken about it with Will Power on here, and James Hinchcliffe, and I don't think there's anything more that needs to be said about it. But with Dan himself, do you have any nice little memory of Dan, or like a favorite memory of Dan?
Yeah, so that year, 2011, I had the privilege to basically teammate with him, and the effort was run by Brian Erda in a technical alliance with the team that we had.
Yeah.
And so we worked the entire month of May together, with the car setup and drafting together, and getting the car ready for race trim and all that. And so I was on the pole, and I think Dan qualified fourth. And so I worked with him, for the entire month of May. It was a lot of fun. And then in Vegas. So anyway, I had a fantastic picture with him, my wife and him. And then in the green room, my sister came with my family, because anyway, my father and my mom, right? They're not like the type of groupie people. So like I called my father and I said, man, I have a really fantastic car. I think I could be on the pole, maybe on the front row. Like if I start this 100th anniversary race, from the front row, would you come see me race? Because he's always working, there's always something better to do, to be at the track. And my mom, she's freaking out. She's walking everywhere. She literally never watches me on track. So anyway, I convinced my father to say yes. So anyway, I called Scott Dixon, and he had a contact, with like with a charter plane. And yeah, so basically when I got on the pole, I called and I organized, and I basically sent a jet to pick them up, and they came. And my sister came with my niece that was like I don't know, maybe 8 months old or 6 months old. And Dan took her in his arm and was playing with her in the green room prior to the race, right? Wow. Such a fun guy. And then in Indianapolis and in Vegas, there was like an event where the drivers were invited to play at the tables, right? So I think Dan was playing blackjack for fun, and I was behind him, and I have a picture with him where I grab him, and he starts laughing, and I literally, like I don't remember what I said to him, but I mean he's laughing because we were always joking. He was such a good guy and a great personality. And when we were in the garage, so it was like good, fine, intense way of preparing the car and working on the car. And I really liked his his feedback, and for the only time he was my teammate, it was really fun to basically work there. And finally, so my car was on the pole and his car won the race. So we basically took everything that was to take at that year of Indianapolis. But also when you walk away from the track, then all of a sudden, it was like, oh, man, like clown jokes, things, fun to be with. You look at your watch and it's like 9 p.m. already, and it's been like 2 hours. Man, we have to go. So time seems to fly with him around.
Nice.
Yeah, and that was. And the crazy thing is that I was living in Vegas, and so I came back from Motegi, Japan. We had a race on the road course. I finished fourth. Was a good weekend. Really good vibe, and I was fighting for top 5 in the championship, and Ilio was against me and all that. And Dan called me because he was told that he was going to be in the car to do this race in Kentucky, like a prep race, and then Vegas in the car. And he was the one called me, and he said, "Man, I just want to let you know that no hard feelings. I'm gonna jump in the car, blah blah blah." And he felt like kind of bad, and I'm like, "Listen, like, I mean, you got an offer, you do what you have to do, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find out the situation on the other side." But he was the first one to pick up the phone and to call me because he was worrying about my feelings when I was gonna discover like the whole thing about like switching cars and all that stuff, right? So and they put him into my car because that year my car was on the pole in Texas. I was on the pole in Indianapolis,
Yeah.
and my chassis, seemed to be a very fast car for super speedways. And for the gig of Las Vegas, basically they put him in my car.
Yeah. It's just nice that his first reaction was to call you, rather than do
Yeah.
anything else. And yeah, I love that. Even now, when you're speaking about obviously the things you've just told us, there's still a smile on your face, and it's obviously some nice memories to have with Dan.
And he was like, he was doing the Florida winter tour in go-karting,
Right.
quite a bit, right? Because he loved go-karting, and I was basically also, I came from go-karting, so I go-kart all my life. So sometimes we see each other, at the Florida winter tour, during the off season. And anyway, when that happened, I made a race suit with the Lionheart logo, on my suit. And yeah, I kept that suit. And I don't know. It's funny. Like, I mean, in my house, I have a basement. I built a basement because I was tired of carrying like boxes in storage. So I had like some sort of a phobia of storage, and I had like helmets and suits. So what I did is that when I built my house in Montreal, I made a basement with like a full-on mural with like suits and mannequins with helmets,
Oh,
and
cool. Nice.
make it look like a little bit like the Iron Man cave, because my wife thinks Robert Downey Jr. is cute. So I said, "Man, I'm gonna make myself a cave like him, but there will be race suits and helmets instead of like Iron Man suit."
Yeah,
Anyway, and
much
then when
better.
I built the Taggy Karting Center, I kind of replicate what was in my basement. I replicated it in the window with more suits and more helmet. Okay, and I'll tell you, the two suits, okay, that are in boxes and are not exposed are the suit that I was wearing in 2011 and that go-kart suit.
Wow,
Because I
that's lovely.
fucking hate it. Sorry the language, but I
No, no,
really
you're good.
hate like going to the center or going into my basement and watching a movie, and all the time watching this stupid white suit that I had on in 2011 at the Vegas race, or the go-kart suit. So, yeah, there's no way you're gonna forget,
Yeah,
but don't make
you
it
don't
on
need it
purpose
there.
to always seeing it every single day.
Yeah, sure,
So
sure.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
not a fun end of 2011 season
no,
for sure.
no, I get that, and it's nice that it's there, but it's not always there, which is a
Yeah, I have it. I know where it is.
yeah,
Once in a while, I have to basically go in that box somehow, and I see that William Rast suit, and I see the Lionheart suit, but it's just I can't have it exposed onto the mannequins every single day.
No, sure. That's yeah. I think we can all get that for sure. Just going to get time. I mean, there's a few things I want to handpick and talk. I mean, there's so much we could talk about with you, which is great. But I need to talk about the poll app at the Indy 500. As people know, anyone who sees this, the Indy 500 always gets a mention on every single chat, even if it's nothing to do with who I'm talking to, because it is fabulous, and I've even got this shirt on here. There's just something about it, isn't there? I mean, even as a fan, I've only been once. I've been to loads and loads of race events in the UK, Europe, and the only one I've been to in the States is the Indy 500. I can't describe it to anyone as a fan. You've been there as a driver. You've put it on pole. I mean, what's it like? Just take that 2011 pole run. I mean, you must have known that it was a good run. You must have thought, you've got the car here. I mean, what goes through your head when you're doing that pole run, and then when they say, yeah, it's official, you're starting the Indy 500 from the pole? I mean, wow.
I mean, it's first of all, for people that have never been there, or the experience as a driver too. Everybody will tell you. First of all, it's the type of place you need to have like the most amount of respect. That track is, no, you can't not respect it. It's very unique because it's a full-on rectangle. Winds are affecting the car quite a bit, and it could be quite tricky out of one going into two, or out of one. It could be tricky going into three. Sometimes there's some crosswind. That's why you have those windsocks that they have in airport, the orange windsocks that drivers would look constantly to give themselves, ideas on where to put their tools. And, in those days, that car that we had, the flat bottom, the Lara car, to extract as much time, as we could, we were doing things to the car that was kind of like not fun, because I was part of the day in IndyCar where the speed is not the limit factor. Okay, it's going to be the setup. So
Right.
as much grip as you can put, sometimes you go with the downforce because you're so fast that you need it, and it becomes a more conventional setup. In those days, you're trying to take grip out of the car. You're trying to free up the car in the corner. You're trying to make it extremely free in the corner so it doesn't scrub speed, right? So you'll have some cross weight in the car on the left side that won't be that fun to drive. But you have the front jacker that you can stick some right front weight, to basically rebalance the car depending on what happens. You were trying to get the front end to a certain right height and keep it there, and then lower the rear end as much as possible. So you're basically running like reverse rake in the car, to basically get the drag out. And then there was like the ineffective, reducing the drag, so there was parts on the car that was like super effective. So take away 100 pounds of drag, take away, 100 pounds of downforce. But then you get to the end, you're removing 300 pounds of downforce for 5 pounds of drag. I mean, the numbers didn't really make sense.
That's crazy.
So, but you were basically at the limit of what you were trying to find out, and to tell you, it was really important because when you look at the difference, like I went real quick and look. So I qualified a 1/10 of a mile an hour quicker than Dixon over 4 laps average, right? It was like a 0.3 versus a 0.1, so over 4 lap average, you have a 0.1 mile an hour difference. Is quite close, so everything counts. And and that year, many years before that, it was like Penske, Ganassi, Andretti. I mean, look, if you have like 4 Andretti cars, 3 Penske cars, 4 Ganassi cars, you're not in the top 10. I mean, those are quick cars and quick teams. So here we are. We the engineers, the team, they did a really, really good job, and we're a 1-car team. So in that year, we had like 2 other cars coming on board to be a teammate in the Indy 500, but the R&D budget is not spreaded over 4 cars. It was only 1 car. It was my car. So the guys did a really good job with what they had, and a lot of effort, passion, like a lot of love and massaging onto the car with very limited resources. And then, the funny thing is my engineer said to me, look, we're going to put this level of downforce on the car. And if you're able to do this speed on day 1, we have a chance to be on the pole. But if you can't, if you're a mile and a half an hour off, then we'll focus on the race car. And
wow, okay.
And it's, I said to people, it's kind of a curse, right? So you're fast, but it was a curse because now, our team, we saw that we had a chance to be fast. So we jumped, with our head first, and we went for it. And our main focus was our qualifying car. Why? Because we had a chance and we didn't want to let it go, right?
Sure.
So we focused on the car. And the reason why I say it's kind of a curse is because as a driver, it's way more fun to go out there and work on your race car with your race downforce trim, because the car is so much easier to drive, right? So when you're out there with like, mechanical car that is set up mechanically to get free and with very limited amount of downforce, it's not a lot of fun, especially when you have a bit of turbulence and when the track is changing and there's some wind change and the grip level goes away. Sometimes it gets you very confused because you start the morning and you feel like a superhero, and then you get in the middle of the afternoon and the car is like nowhere near where you want it to be. So you're second guessing yourself and doubting yourself a lot in where you need to be to go on to qualify. So anyway, and the other thing that I explain to people sometimes is that, you need to have a lot of faith in your team also, because, you're going to go -3, -4 with the rear wing, -5, -6. And all of a sudden, you can see the sponsor from the back. You don't even see it from the front. You actually have to go to the back to see the sponsor on the rear wing. And when you're in the pit lane and you're on the radio and the team calls for some changes, you can hear what they're going to do. And you're like, really? Like,
I'm not sure.
And the thing is, like, you need to have faith to even go out there and try it, even though it's a complete rubbish. Because if it is rubbish and you were willing and not close-minded in testing it, well, the car will show weakness. And when it shows weakness and you scare yourself a bit, then and you get like some pretty, wild, wheel movement in the car, then when you come back, it basically directs the team towards a direction where they saw weakness come out, right? But if you are not willing to go the extra mile to see some of the weakness, then, well, they might get it, but they won't know, the full extent of the weakness of the car. So, I worked with an engineer of mine that I love, and I are really good friends, Todd Malloy. And Todd was like, he made some pretty funny jokes about like some, wheel movement, at Indianapolis, because, the team follows like a datum lap, with the steering angle that it's like basically on the screen. And when they see a spike going underneath the datum line, they will say pit pit this lap, right? And but then there's the 0 line. So then when the steering wheel basically goes the other way around, the spike goes below the 0 line, and then he saw some. So the engineer saw a couple of spikes once in a while, and when they see this, they're like, so when they see this, they're freaking out, because you're exposing their car to potential risk and damage, and you don't have many cars. You have only one car, and that's the car you need, right? So they go on the radio and they go pit. And they,
That's enough.
but you're already coming into the pits because, man, you basically, like shit yourself, yourself. So you're coming in, you're not staying on the track, right? So
You're way ahead of them.
and you're basically going on the radio saying, I know, I'm on my way to the pits, guys. I just barely made it out of the corner, right? So, long story short, for the Indy, it's, the preparation to qualifying is quite nuts, because also you need to run on good tires. When you go out with that level of downforce level, you're going to run on the goodness of the tires, right? Those 4 laps are going to be on the tire life.
Yeah.
And like when you're running very trim and very little downforce, the first lap is going to be like a banger, and then the second, third, fourth lap is going to go down, because the car, even though you're flat out, the car's going to slide and it's going to scrub, right?
Sure.
And the goal, our goal was to make the car very free when we were in the corner. And in Indianapolis, right, what happens is that you reach the top speed in turn 1, and you reach top speed in turn 3. But when you come out of turn 1, even though you're flat out, your top speed is way lower, right? Because you scrub through turn 1. So in between the dog leg, you don't have the chance to reaccelerate, and now you turn again for turn 2. So then your speed's gonna go even lower in turn 2 than turn 1. So if you have, and same thing out of turn 4. So if you have the ability to not get the car to scrub in turn 1, when you turn to turn 2, I'm just going to give you a number. Like, let's say you hit 240 miles an hour going into turn 1. The car's going to drop, let's say, at 220, right? But then when you turn for turn 2, then it's going to go down to 215.
Right.
So, but if you only drop at 221 instead of like 220, then when you turn to go to turn 2, the car is going to drop at 216, right? Okay. So maybe your top speed is not going to be the greatest, but in between the dog leg, your scrub for entering turn 2 is going to be less. And then the second part of the deceleration of the car, even though you're flat out, will be less affected in 2 and will be less affected in 4. Cool. So we had a car that was extremely free, and was basically surviving on the goodness of the tire. And then the other thing too is like the guys lowered the car a lot. It was like, sparking and banging on the ground, because when you go from, let's say, I think my memory serves me right, I think in the race you were running between 1.5 and 2.5 degree, of a positive rear wing, and then in qualifying you could go all the way to -8 degree, right? So when you're running -8, the thing is, the rear doesn't squat down on the straightaway as much. It actually could potentially lift, right? Instead of pushing down. So you're statically, you have to compensate with the ride height being extremely low on scale statically, for dynamically to be at the right place where you're going to enter turn 1. But so you basically bang on the ground on low tire pressure, leaving the pits, right? Because you want to make sure that on your opening lap, when you enter in turn 1, the rear ride height is at the right place, and you need to compensate because the car is not going to squat down because of a lack of rear downforce. So you put it very low, and then when it's low, it's hitting with lower tire pressure. It hits. So then when you open your lap and you basically leave, pit out, when you go to turn 1 and 2 on your way out, and 3 and 4, and you feel the car skipping, you still need to stay flat out, because your opening lap is based on your launch, right? So you can't lift. And when the car hits the ground, it basically loses some pressure on the rear tire, right? So if the car hits, the rear tire lose contact patch, right? Anyway, long story short, there's a lot of things behind the scene that people don't really see at Indianapolis, and the team has to be so focused on analyzing the data and looking at every little numbers here and there to make sure that everything is spot on. And sometimes, the driver will leave the pits and feel the car is gone wrong, and you don't even do another lap. You take the car straight from the pit lane. You just did a run, 4 laps, come back in, go straight into the garage. Come back out, 4 laps, straight into the garage. Remeasure everything. It's this back and forth process, and the entire intensity that the team drivers, every team member goes through, on in Indianapolis, that makes this race, so you when you do good there, it's a full relief, right? Because I mean, you're basically intense for that entire month. And yeah, I had the fortune of being rookie in 09, and I was on the pole in 2011, and I always kind of did good there, ran up front. The year that Alexander Rossi won it, I was in the lead with very, very few laps left. And I came into the pits, and I was like, if I would have come out of the pits with no yellow, I was home free. And Buddy Lazier lost a tire, and they went yellow, and I lost a lap. So I went from leading to what? It was like 28 laps to go, I think, and it was game over, right? It was the sprint to the finish. So winning that race was the one thing I wanted to do, and I didn't have the chance to do. But like just competing there for the big prize, but having had the chance to, I kind of live it all, right? I started last, I started 33rd, I finished 10th, rookie. I started from the pole. I fought with the two Ganassis, Dario and Scott and Dan, for the longest time possible. And 2011 was not my year. We had a engine overheat. We were losing power, and then the team had to start opening up the shutters into the car, and we basically ripped off right shutters from a rad entry on the right side, and instead of like taking one small part, we took out the entire thing. So now the car was like kind of like pulling to the right because the opening was so huge. And then we lost, I think, a mile and a half hour, in top speed. And the next pit stop, we took some drag out. So we basically took out some rear rickers, and we lost the balance of the car, and I hit the wall. So the same year that JR, it hit the wall as well. So and Dan won. So it's so tough. I mean, it's not an easy race. It requires like a ton of preparation and dedication. So everybody's, on their toes, like, in their team members, engineers, everybody.
Yeah, and you need a bit of good fortune to go your way as well. I mean, you over 500 miles, you're gonna need some luck. But as you said, I mean, okay, it would have been lovely to win the thing, but you've got Rookie of the Year, you've battled at the front, you've put it on pole. I mean, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, isn't it?
And I came out of there with in all, with all my pieces, right? I mean, when I say stories to my family, I said, look, that year I was willing to take risks. I wanted it. You asked me at the beginning, what it felt to be on the pole, and for a one-car team that was out qualifying, the big dogs in those years, was a huge honor. But mostly, the what we went through and what we were willing to go through. Like when I got on the radio to Rob Edwards, and I think we got on the radio together, and I basically went on the radio and I said, and the reason why, because I was the last car to go by, was I was on the pole during the day, so I was like fastest, and then for the pole shootout at the end, the fastest guy was going last. So I knew that once my lap was recorded, I was going to know if I was on pole or not, right? So I got on the radio, and basically Rob spoke at the same time as me. So I said, did we make it? Did we do it? And then I hear silence, and I'm like, oh, man, we didn't do it. What? So then he clicked on the radio, and I hear the sound around his mic of people screaming, cheering, and he went, "You are on the pole for the Indianapolis 500." And man, I started crying. I was like, so much intensity for that whole month, and willing to drive a pretty freaking loose car, and making it like, it was awesome.
That's awesome. I love that. That's some cool words to hear, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just looking in the comments. There's a couple of things that are coming up, a couple of topics that are going to come up, and I'm going to get to them now. I mean, there's so many. I don't want to talk about bad stuff, negative stuff, because you've had some great results and everything, and the first win. But something that's coming up is the Lausitz-Ring in Germany, 2001. Again, not something I want to dwell on for too long. Alex Zanardi, the accident, and everything else. Obviously, you were there was nothing you could do. Nothing you could do about what happened. I know you were knocked out, weren't you? You were knocked unconscious with the impact. I mean, do you remember how it all happened? Because and then also what happened afterwards? Because I guess that was even more difficult. I guess.
Yeah. So I didn't have many crashes in my career, but like the ones that I had, like I remember the last race in Fontana was a 120G impact.
Oh yeah, you went
backwards into the wall. I think I was running second, and it was the last lap, and the engine blew up in turn one, so I spun on my oil, and I don't close my eyes like when I wreck,
right.
and until the last moment. And one of the doctors said to me that when you pass out, if you don't close your eyes, most likely you will remember until the moment you wreck. But if you close your eyes as you're wrecking, if you pass out, there's a possibility that you won't remember that, right?
Okay.
So I don't know. It's just unconscious stuff, right? I mean, I don't decide if I close them or I keep them open, and I always kept them open until the last minute. So yeah, so we were racing. The Reynard cars were quite quick there. We were in a fight in a group of 405 cars. Alex was in a position to also do really well. I think there was Kenny Brock, Max, myself, Pat, my teammate, and we were fighting for the front. And there's a last pit stop, and Alex decides to come in. Don't change tires, and so he took the pit limiter out, and massive horsepower in those days, no traction control. Basically, with warm tires, thinking it's gonna go okay. But when he spun, so I was running in tandem with Pat, and so we were staggered, right? Because the aerodynamics was affected quite a bit. So, Pat is using one lane, I'm in another lane, and towing him on the straightaway, but basically, changing lanes in the corner. And so I'm coming in the corner, and basically, from the, we have the headrest like this, and I'm like turned, and from the corner of my eye, I see like a car coming up, and it happens in a split second because he was perpendicular to the track.
Yeah,
and so literally at 0 kilometers per hour for us, because we're coming, and now we're coming to his location, but even if he's rolling back, he's basically perpendicular on the track. So for us, he's at 0. So the decel, or the closing rate was like tremendous. And so I from a split second, I saw the car. I don't know who it was, but I saw a car coming up, and I just basically turned left by lifting, going down, because he was coming up and I went down, hoping that I could avoid, and before I can even think, I'm in the car. So basically, there was no talent there or anything like that. It was just pure, like reaction, or like instinct or survival instinct, because I mean, when a car comes up on an oval, right, very rarely, like you will see a guy moving up unless you're already up and there's going to be more distance from coming from the top all the way down
to the,
than just basically staying up. But Pat was up, and basically when when you replay it and you see it, his car is basically splitting the two players' cars, and Pat is at the top and I'm at the bottom. So there is more, it's going to be a smaller distance for me to go down and try to avoid him. And and lucky enough that this particular going down was hitting the very weak part of the chassis, because if I would have hit him straight where his body was in the cockpit, I mean, we would have probably both be dead, because the impact would have been way higher from a front point of view for me, and for him literally the car would have not been able to probably go through and split the car completely, because of the side pod, the radiator, and the chassis on the side of the driver is way more strong. But like maybe I would have go through, but maybe less. And so anyway, like the engineer said that maybe like 2 feet up and it's a totally different result. But it's like we've talked before about crashes, like Greg and Dan and all that stuff, and they were no fun crashes to be part of and to go through and things like that, like in the memory aspect of it. But that wreck, I was like basically this close to hang my helmet and just say, call it, and just don't do racing anymore. I flew from Germany to England. We had another race in England.
To Rockingham, wasn't it?
And I was in a hotel there, and it was raining, and I was brushing my teeth, man. It was like foggy outside. It was shitty weather, and I was like brushing my teeth, and after 5 minutes, I didn't even know how long I was brushing my teeth for. So like, then I was doing something else, like I start, like tying my shoes, and then I realized, like, 10 minutes later, I still have one shoe not tied, and I'm thinking, my brain is not able to function. Like I'm not controlling the thoughts, like I'm not controlling the thoughts in the present, like it's always think of something else, but I'm trying to do other things to basically distract me, but I can't be distracted because I am distracted and I don't even know what I'm doing. So anyway, I was
like in a daze almost, I guess. Just
and it was like I don't know, like I have huge respect for him. I have huge respect for his wife, because she came to see me at the hospital, and like the only thing that Daniela was trying to do was just basically right away from there basically make sure that I was like okay. And I was like, even though you can review all the wrecks you want and you can see everything, there was like, the mind is uncontrollable, like if you are thinking to yourself, like, why was I involved in this? Why was I, and then again, like it was 9/11, like we had like these conversation prior to the race about like maybe canceling the race, lots of crew members and people that were there were having their mind elsewhere. They had maybe family members and friends, in the towers. They couldn't reach them. I think the whole atmosphere was pretty shitty. And like, so then after that, the aftermath of the race ends up being even worse, and I'm thinking, man, what is going on here? Like, like just the freaking bombing and the terrorist attack, and then this, and maybe it's a sign, and
happening in 1 week. It was
it was no fun. And then the thing is, I'll tell you this. I mean, we probably know by now, but I have amazing memory, and I could tell you, like the spring that I ran on my car in 2011. I could tell you, if I ran a front bar at the front or not. Like I have huge memory about these type of things, right? And I remember a lot. I remember strategy. I remember, and in England, I have no clue. I started the race. I finished the race. I don't know how many laps I've done. I don't know where I finished. I don't know when I pitted. I have it's the only race in my life that I don't know what I've done the entire weekend.
Wow.
I was there like a vegetable, literally. So when I left from there, I was like really questioning myself, like how could I be on a racetrack and be like a vegetable, like it's not
Not
me,
be there.
like I mean I'm on the track, I'm talking to the guys on the radio, I'm looking at mileage, I'm looking at tire pressure, I'm talking about rear setup and things like that, and all of a sudden, everything that happens in England, I have no clue what happens to me. So
Wow.
I mean, like people will say, "Oh man," people will always try to cheer you up, and it's great, and you appreciate all the cheer up and all this stuff, and there's nothing you can do. I mean, people saw the accident, and it was like just such a shame, But there is nothing that people will be able to say that they will control your mind, right? So your mind is going to be in control from that point on. And I'll tell you, so on top of having Daniela, having like huge amount of respect for what she did, and like every time I texted her afterwards, she answered me, but like there's this part of you that is almost embarrassed, because you're the one, part of that messed up accident, right? So you don't know where to put yourself, you don't know where to stand, right? I mean, it's kind of like almost like an embarrassment, right? And like you thinking, I mean, there's nothing more important in life than life itself, like I mean, there's no racing that's going to make up for this. So maybe my sacrifice has to be walking away from racing, so your mind is playing tricks on you, and basically you're second guessing to a point where you're full of a lot of stuff in your mind. And what are you going to do? Like, I mean, you're not going to get on a car because it's becoming irrelevant for you to having fun in a car. And you've done it with passion and you've done it with love, but now you're not even doing it like in the same state of mind, right? So it becomes even more clear that potentially it's the right thing to do. And I'll tell you what changed everything. So Alex came in Toronto, and he arrived in the pit lane. And so I have my player's Nomex shirt, cut sleeve, sleeveless. And he walks, with his crutches. Yeah. And he comes to me with his big smile right away. So for the first like 10 seconds, like my heart stopped and I took a breather, and he's coming, right? So then I grab him, and I'll I'll tell you this. And because I was like, you'll find some of these details like weird, and maybe I'm weird, but I don't know. Like, because I had sleeveless shirts. When I grab him, like it felt like a warm feeling, And then he goes into so we start talking Italian, and then he goes into my ear. He goes, sai che sono un pollice più grande adesso? He tells me in Italian, he says, I'm an inch taller now.
Because of his
legs. Like, and then with his accent.
What a lovely thing to say.
With his voice, and with his kind of like a comedian type of attitude. Like he told me that.
Wow.
And
amazing.
And I tell you, this is the truth, and I will always like remember this. like from that moment on, like I felt like I was carrying like 200 pounds of rock on my shoulder,
Yeah.
and poof,
It just went.
it just went away, and
Oh, wow.
he made me laugh. We joked around. Then we spent some time in the Ganassi hospitality with Jimmy Vassar and Max
Cool.
and Tony, and more jokes, and that's it. And
It's been
in within like 60 seconds, like this entire like heaviness on my chest,
it
you know,
just
questioning, you know, why should I do this, and why should I continue to do this, and why do I not do some other things, and blah 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 blah. Then all of a sudden, that entire feeling that you don't want to
anxiety
carry
almost.
was disappeared
Wow.
in within no time. And then I stay, like when I give him a hug, I was, you know, like I was happy. I was happy to see him, and I was happy to see how happy he was, and how funny he was, and how jokey he was about everything. And it's like it made it for me, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was it. And that's why, you know, like I will always have huge respect for the guy, because of everything also he accomplished afterwards.
Yeah, the Olympics and everything.
Is mind, is dedication. You know, like when to go through some challenges in life like this, you know, I don't know, not a lot of people can do, but
No. No.
he can. I mean, he's the type of guy with the attitude that he had, that that he could go through anything, you know.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, I love that obviously the cause of you feeling that bad was obviously the accident and how you reconciled it in your head, but the way it was turned around was through the guy who was most affected by it, I guess. Which is lovely. I think that's lovely. That's great. That's very.
No, and the thing is, you know, like some people said, you know, don't watch the accident, don't watch the replay, don't do this, blah 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 blah. But you know what? It's is this like you need to see what happened, and then when you see what happened, you're wondering, you know, what could I've done different? Is there a possibility to avoid it? You're trying to replay things in your head, you know, a million times, but you know there's nothing you could do. But then after that, you're convincing yourself of that. Everybody else, you know, is convincing yourself of that. But then, you know, like then all of a sudden the mind plays tricks on you by itself, and then you're a passenger, you know. So it's like you know, it's a very weird scenario, and he played a big role in the continuity after that, you know, for me anyway.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Which is great to hear. No, that's great, and thank you for talking about it, because obviously we all know about the accident, and yeah, that's very cool. Okay, so I'm looking at the time again. There are loads of comments coming in. Quick one about like Rockingham. Someone actually asked what if you enjoyed racing around Rockingham here in the UK, but you said you can't remember it, which is fair enough. And the circuit is no longer, it isn't used anymore. They've closed it down. It's now a big car park, which is sad. But yeah, very quickly, something else that comes up all the time. I mean, I'd love to talk about loads of other stuff, but people want me to ask you about Paul Tracy because it's Paul Tracy. Obviously, there was like a beef, wasn't there, between you guys? Was it 04? There was an incident. I forget where it was.
It's in Houston, I think, on the street course.
There was an incident, wasn't it? It was on the old runway, I think it was. And
no, it was in the street course. I was running the Aussie Vineyard car, and running third. Paul was second, and he went into the runoff long on the brakes.
Yeah.
And he basically like did a 180, and then I was coming on the brakes, and he basically rejoined the track while I was at the apex, and literally kind of T-boned me from the side, and basically poke a big hole in the with the nose of his car in the side of my tub. And again, very small team, low budget, then no spare cars. I look at my car, I get like really like angry about the situation, and we're good friends, right? But Paul, as Paul, always had like a funny attitude, like, I mean, to me, he's kind of a teddy bear, he plays this bad boy, type of actor guy, but then he's very, very nice, outside the track, like very generous, very nice. And so because we knew each other, and because we were friends, I just allowed myself to go and just basically scream at him, instead of like avoiding him like he's a stranger, and be kind of pissed at him, but without confronting him. So anyway, yeah, I got into the pit lane, and I was like screaming at him, like, that he messed up my car, and what a stupid move and all that. But in reality, what I was hoping for was like in his look, I was hoping for like feeling apologetic, feeling sorry for myself, like I'm in the big team with like like multiple spare cars, and you're in a small team, so I feel really sorry for you, my friend. And at that particular time, he was more focused on returning to his pit, and I felt even more shitty because I just didn't really see in his eyes at that time that he was like feeling for me. So it got me even more fired up. But yeah, it's sometimes, like the emotions run high in those situations, and we were having a good race, and it was important for our team, to finish strong. So being out of the race for like a situation that could have been avoided was like very frustrating. But Paul's a really good guy, and we share a lot of stories and moments in Vegas, and we did some bike rides, together, and Halloween parties, and so even he came to my house, like the day that actually I said the story that Paul actually almost killed me twice, on
the track. Halloween thing in Vegas.
Yeah, on the track in Houston. Yeah, on the track in Houston, that was once. And then the second time is when he joked about it, and he showed up with his buddy to our Halloween party. So we were hosting that year in Bronte, and Pat's wife were cooking in the backyard, and we were all dressed up. So there was all kinds of food on the backyard. We were waiting for them, and Paul shows up with his Yamaha Rhino, all decked out, higher suspension, and his new toy. And so he shows up with his buddy, and these guys are dressed up in his race suits and my suits, and we exchange helmets, so he had one guy with my helmet and one guy with his helmet, and they were faking that they were fighting in the driveway, right? But he was dressed as a Mexican wrestler, okay? And now there's like you have to, this is a funny story. So you have Miguel Duhamel is like a superbike champion, and you have like Paul Tracy, and you have Pat Carpentier, and you have myself. And now Paul wants to bring us out with his like new toy. So in the back, me and Pat sit in the back, and we have only the lap belt because the shoulder belts are too short because they're for kids. So we only take the lap belt, and Miguel is on the passenger seat. Paul is on the driver's seat with his Mexican wrestler outfit, Nacho Libre. And then you have Miguel, he's dressed in a purple suit, like as a pimp. And you have like Pat is a Beetlejuice. And then you have me as Bozo the Clown with like these contact lens, freaky eyes, full makeup, big shoes. And now we go on the golf course, and the suspension breaks. So one swing arm broke, and then the little rhino flip on his side and on my side, and so my head hit the concrete. I had to have like 18 staples in my head, right? So huge concussion, right? Big concussion. That was one of the biggest concussion I had. Like not even in racing match that. So basically, I'm on the ground, pissing blood everywhere. Like
Jeez.
Paul is at the top, right? And he's looking at the blood coming out of my head, and he thinks I'm dead. So he basically untie himself and falls on Miguel, and then Pat in Beetlejuice outfit runs into every home on the golf course, knocking on their patio door to call 911. But we're no Halloween. It's the 20th of October or something, so nobody opens the door, right? So he basically ends up sprinting all the way to my house and tells the girls to basically call 911 because there's an accident. It's 8 o'clock at night, right? So ambulance shows up, go to the hospital, like a total mess. And so I come back from the hospital. I mean, the food is in the backyard. I mean, party's over. We didn't even everything was there. And I start vacuuming the garage, and Bronte looks at me and he goes, "What you doing?" And I'm like, "Vacuuming the garage. Don't know what you're doing." And the next morning, Paul comes to see me, and I'm actually rocking onto the couch, and Paul is flipping out. Like he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know. I hope he's gonna get better and better."
I've broken Alex. I've broken him.
Yeah. So then I called Pat. And I said, "Man, something's wrong with me. Like I have issues with my depth perception. I drive my car to go do grocery. And when I get to the runabout, I don't know, man, I can't aim properly. And it's weird. Like, I mean, my career is over. Like, I mean, I'm not going to be able to drive a car." And Pat goes, nah, don't worry about it. I had one of those concussions. You'll be fine. It's coming back. And fair enough. Like a few days later, it all come back. And so yeah, I mean, it's like that's one of our crazy stories where Paul actually almost killed me twice.
Oh, it sounds like there's never a dull moment with Paul Tracy around.
Yeah, but he was really fun guy, and very, like I said, very generous. When I moved to Vegas, to improve my fitness and to do cycling and to live at higher altitude and to get used to the weather and all that. So he got me into cycling and basically linked me to some bike store to get my stuff ready and called me. And sometimes I was building a house and I was like doing stuff myself inside, and he would basically pop in my house and just say hi, and I say, "Yeah, I'm still working." It's like it's 45 degrees in the heat and I'm working in my house. And he would come and say hello, offer me to go out, and yeah. So it's just like the incident is one of those things where like the emotion is on the limiter, but at the end of the day, when everything settles down, like just he was a good guy.
Yeah, it's not the full story. What's portrayed in the media, which is often the case, isn't it? That's cool.
Yeah. I've seen some way tougher guy, and more scary guys than Paul. I tell you that.
I think that's the sound bite we need to take from this chat.
Yeah.
There's scarier guys than Paul. Yeah, that's great. I love that. Okay, just a couple of things I want to touch on before we wind down. As I said, there's loads we can talk about. Just quickly, you've done racing in the Xfinity series and in the trucks, and you've been racing for years in the Pinties, the NASCAR Canada series. You've won races there and stuff. Completely different from the open wheel thing. But it just looks like a lot of fun. I mean, I spoke with Ryan Vargas on here. He said he went from Xfinity and that kind of ladder into the trucks, and he said it was like, he said the truck was so high it was like driving a brick. He said it was just the weirdest sensation to drive one of those things.
Yeah, I can tell you something is in 2000, and I think it's 2011. I had the chance to race for Penske in the
Yeah,
Xfinity, and
yeah, it's
in
cool.
Montreal. And so last minute like this, like I end up driving the car. But the funny thing is, like, the experience of those years, driving the 12 and the 22 car was like some of the best experience, because um, I've really had the chance to see what like one of the best team in the world is all about, right?
Yeah,
So they invite me to the race shop to mold the seat, and so everything is like so everything's ready, and there's a full car in a room with no body panel, and then there's the seat on a table mounted above a table to basically have access to do the mold in the best way possible, so then you can try it and they can work around you and fit your belt onto the seat, and everything is going to be spick and span, right?
yeah,
So but anyway, I jump into one of those molded seat that is already molded, um, and and uh, and I really love it, and I like it. So we do a bit of work, and they're gonna probably like recover it with Nomex anyway. And so I'm the pedals, every like it's like I'm in the car, and it feels like I'm in my car, right? It's beautiful. So they say, okay, so we will see you in Montreal. And I'm like, huh?
you're
So, okay.
like,
So I go to Montreal, and they arrive, and everything's like Villeneuve is there. Villeneuve is driving the 22. I drive the 12, and so we're teammates for the weekend, and then we're out there. But before all of that happens, on Friday morning, I get on the track, and the last time I drove the track was with an IndyCar.
right.
And I remember IndyCar, right? And I was on the pole there in 2003 with an IndyCar, and we were about 3 seconds a lap slower than the Formula One. And so that was IndyCar, okay? And and so I take the car, and I come out of the airpin on uh, lap one on Saturday morning, and I come out of the airpin. I go along the water. I get to the casino bridge,
Yeah,
and I see like 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Like, I mean, so many braking markers. I'm like, I'm used to 3, 2, 1, right? So, and they're yellow, black. I remember, and so I arrive, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'm just gonna brake at the 4 marker, just give myself some room, and I hit the brake, and basically the car start wheel
it was on
hopping
its
in the
nose.
rear. So the rear axle is going like this, and I can't slow that thing down. I'm coming in, and the car is like 3,500 pounds, because in those days they had like the metal sheet panels, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
And I'm not slowing it. I mean, there's no way. The car lost the front downforce with the splitter, because when I brake and I start really wheel hopping, I had to take my foot off the brake. So now the splitter
Just
came back off. Now I don't have the front downforce to basically pin the front down. I took my foot off the brake, and normally, like what you do in an IndyCar, you would basically brake extremely hard right away, and as the downforce level comes out, you basically modulate, right? You have to modulate, because you're going from, I don't know, 7,000 pounds of downforce to 2,000 pounds of downforce in your decel. So there's going to be a point where the downforce level equals the weight of the car. So then you have to modulate out. But
right,
in
right.
in in the in the initial tap on the brake, when you're a left foot braker, there's no way you're gonna lock the wheels with an open wheel car, because the downforce level is tremendous, right? But so yeah, that car didn't work that way. So the rear start wheel hopping, and I'm coming in like a train, and now I see the chicane. So the last chicane, I'm blowing by the chicane, and then there's the pit in. I'm going into the pits, right? And then there's the suite, the garage wall, the last garage, and I'm coming in, and I'm just gonna crash into the garage, and I'm like, just try to recover, and I basically miss the garage by this much, right?
Jeez.
And my heart is in my throat, and I'm thinking, oh my God, can you imagine? I damage a Penske car on lap 1 of practice 1. Man, Roger's gonna be on the phone, and it's gonna be like game over, right?
That's it. Out, yeah.
So these guys come on the radio, and my crew chief at the time, I remember it was Chad Walter, and Chad comes on the phone, comes on the radio, and he goes, "Hey mate, we are not using pit lane in NASCAR. You need to come in the back of the garage." And I said, "Listen, I was not planning to come into the pit. I just bailed out to miss the pit wall, the pit suite wall." And so that was my first experience, first lap.
Wow.
And then you realize that to drive the car, like it requires like a different technique on the brakes, and also it requires like more finesse to keep the front loaded, all the way to when you enter the corner. So even though, and those cars are getting to pretty high speed. Why? Because with the IndyCar in Montreal, you were coming out extremely quick of the hairpin, but at some point you were reaching a plateau, especially with no DRS. Once you carry these big wings, the speed goes up, goes up, goes up, and after a certain point, the speed doesn't want to go up because you're pulling a parachute, right? But the Xfinity car with the similar power than an Indy car with no downforce, the car just keeps accelerating, right? I mean, it has the horsepower to pull you, so it keeps accelerating, and but it requires way, way, way longer braking distance. So you're staying on the pedal longer. When the front goes down and the splitter gets really close to the ground, you need to keep it there, so it uses all the downforce to keep the weight on the nose, and with avoiding the rear hop, so and it basically, driving these cars, it requires a lot of thinking, and it's not easy. It doesn't matter if you're going 20 seconds a lap slower. It looks like you're going at the same speed than another car, because to push it to its limit and to use every inches, the performance of the car with the no downforce is here, but you still need to drive it to its limit, right? So it requires a lot of finesse, and you can't abuse the tire either, because if you abuse the tire with a 3,500-pound car, your tire deg is going to go down extremely quick.
Drop off the cliff.
So yeah, it was a wake-up call, and lots of appreciation for what the NASCAR guy do on a daily basis, with these cars at the time. And I ended up enjoying it a lot, and it was a huge challenge. And after that, I was able to drive the 22 car, for Penske for a couple of years on the road course. I had like so much fun and so much good success with them. And it was it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love all that technical stuff with all the all the differences between the cars. But yeah, it's very cool. I'd love to have
the team. The team is just the team is at such a high level. I was
top drawer, aren't they?
So they brought me when I drove the 22 car. We did a test at I was with Jeremy Bullins, the crew chief. Amazing crew chief at the time. He was on the Xfinity program, and so I go to VIR racetrack to do a shakedown and to test the car. Like we were testing a bunch of different things, and on the road course, they had a plan to follow. So I go out and I just do my thing, and give myself feedback and all that. And Jeremy says, "Man, lap time is extremely good. We came here in the past and we did like a I don't know, like a 111 something, and you did like a 110.9 or something like that, right? Whatever. And it's very fast. So I said, cool, we're good. So this is going to be a good car. He goes, no, but this is not the car you're going to drive. Huh? I said, no, this is just our show. This is just our test car. You're going to have another car when you get there, the real race car. So basically, can you imagine like how confident the team is to basically accumulate the data with a car that you on track and test, and you're already like pounding extremely fast laps. So as a driver, you feel, man, let's take this piece right now the way it is, and let's take it and let's go racing with it. And then no, like there's going to be a car that you didn't drive that will end up being there waiting for you when you get there.
Wow.
It's just like, it was mind-blowing, like just like the whole, the whole experience, once in my lifetime, being able to drive for them. And then in 2011, I have like this frame and this picture where, like I have Roger in the pit lane, and he came after the pole at Indy, and he came and shake my hands, so I ended up having the chance to, to drive for him, and huge respect for him and his whole team, Tim Cindric and everybody that I work with, because like even today, like I just, if I send an email to Roger, and within like 10 minutes, he will answer. Wow. I mean, this is a busy guy, right? I don't know what to say. Like just the respect, the attitude, it replicates it into the level that the people that work for him put into the team, and it's just and that's why Penske is who they are, because they have an amazing leader, he's a good person. And so that's something that will always be one of the best memory, of my career.
It's a cool thing to be able to say that you race for Team Penske. I mean, again, anyone who tunes into these knows I'm always neutral on the page, but personally, I'm a Penske guy. I said Rick Mears won the first Indy 500 I ever watched. I followed Penske ever since. And someone asked me last week, or 2 weeks ago, said, who is the one person that you'd like to have on the show for a chat? And I said, well, there's two. One was Nigel Mansell, who was my childhood hero, and the other's Roger Penske, because what an amazing guy! It just what he and his team have done in motorsport it's unbelievable, isn't it? It's incredible.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can tell you, like he's one of the nicest guy that I know, because from who he is in the world of motorsport, and who he is as a person, like you could basically think that you'll basically send him a message and you'll never hear from him. And after I built the Taggy karting center, I was like looking to basically meet some guys at Porsche to discuss potential partnership with sim racing and simulators in the center and all that. And I just sent a quick email to Roger, and Roger says, no problem. The president of Porsche Canada is a friend of mine, and here it is. Boom, boom, boom. And then, I don't know, 2 weeks later, the president of Porsche Canada is in the center, and we start having a chat.
Wow.
It's just like
that's incredible.
I'm sure some of the guys that work for him longer could have even more compelling and heartfelt story. But for me, the things that I saw that impressed me is how available he is, how genuine he is, and how dedicated he is, every single day with his companies, his teams, and everybody. He's everywhere all the time, and there's only 365 days in a year. It's he's an amazing guy.
Yeah, absolutely, and and just a legend, isn't he, of motorsport, certainly North America and obviously globally as well. Okay, very quick. One thing I could talk about Bathurst, which is coming up, but I'm very wary of the time and everything. I could sit here and talk all night, but I won't. We could be here at 4 o'clock in the morning here. I'll be happy with that. But yeah, very quickly, Bathurst is coming up this weekend. You've raced it. What a place to go racing.
Yeah. I had a chance to drive a supercar there, a V8 supercar, and I loved it. Really, really loved it. For a year or two, I tried to get a ride in there. So much I love the car because they have the best of, like a sports car, and they also have the best of a NASCAR mixed together. And I think the car has evolved, with their suspension and all that. And I think for a open wheel driver, it was easier and it was much nicer probably to drive, like the V8 supercar. And I think now, like the next gen car in NASCAR with their sequential gearbox and their suspension on that, I think NASCAR went towards what V8 supercar is, when they're driving on the road course. So, but I didn't drive the next gen car, but I drove the V8 supercar and the older generation of NASCAR. So it was a really fun car to drive, to tell you the truth. And then, being able to drive it in Bathurst, man, it was like, so we survived that entire race. I think we finished, I don't know where we finished, like 12th or something. It was really good, a really good event. I learned a lot, even though my wife is Australian, from Adelaide. When I got to Bathurst, like depending on which manufacturer you were driving, there was one side of the mountain that they were for you, and one side of the mountain they were not for you. So they're very big fanatic, and they're supporting, car brands like that. And the track is, the track is a mix of Spa and Monaco. There's a street course approach with Spa elevation, and and then some other places it's more like of a traditional road course.
Like
and then in other places you're in within walls. It seems like only Australia. Well, now in Formula One, they have tracks. Jeddah, is a super daunting, like street course track. But for us in IndyCar, when you look at the tracks, you look at Toronto, Detroit, you look at Long Beach. Street, there's a lot of like tight corners, and but then Australia has like the Surfers Paradise racetrack, one of the longest street course I've been able to race on, and the back chicane in an IndyCar were out of control. I mean, it was like fourth gear in the back chicane, kind of like challenging the speed bump all the way to the tire. And then you just get it wrong there, and it's like the consequences are huge. And way more higher speed corners, than any other tracks. And then you go to Bathurst, and then it's another level, right? Because some of the corners are really high speed, and they're like street course style, right? With a super high speed, lots of consequences, bad consequences if you get it wrong. So it's you get everything there. You get like massive braking, you get like huge deceleration, you get like long duration corners, you get like tight corner, you get like wheel spin out, you get like switchback, and like the one thing that impressed me a lot about Bathurst is they call it the dipper, and when you go down, it's not very fast. but
It's when you come off like Skyline, isn't it? And then you drop down.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
It's not very fast, but the level of grip that's there when the cars put grip and grip and grip, at some point when the car hits the downhill, I mean, you come up on two wheels. It's crazy, like the grip level. Like the only thing I felt that in the past was in my go-kart, getting
Wow.
to a track where there's like very high grip and you come up on two wheels because it's super sticky. And then felt that with the V8 supercar it was like very, very, very cool.
That's awesome. I love hearing the driver's perspective on Bathurst, because obviously we see it on the TV, and us who aren't racers and we're just fans, we see it and think that looks cool. And everyone I've spoken to who's ever driven it has just said it's just the coolest thing to drive. It's amazing. I spoke to actually one of the British touring car guys, John Cleland, and he was racing with Holden, and he broke down. His car just died on the wrong part of the mountain, if I put it that way, where all the Ford guys were. And he said, that there were beer cans. So this was in qualifying, I think, and there were beer cans, full ones, coming over and hitting the windscreen, just being pelted from all the Ford fans. And he said, that you're in the you know that you're hated when the Aussies are willing to waste a beer on you. Just throw a beer at you.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is cool.
Yeah, you don't want to go through, that part, if you're basically driving a Holden. You don't want to go through the Ford guys or vice versa. It's they're taking it pretty seriously.
Yeah, he said he wasn't sure where he was safer, inside the car or out. He was going to get hit by something.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh dear. No, that's brilliant. Okay, very quickly, just talking about drinks and stuff. You got your energy drink tag on the go. Has been released. That's good stuff.
It's a like I said, like with the tag on the go cookies, there was a story behind it from my severe food allergy. Became a really nice snack, good option. Kids are late for school. You give them that, and you feel that they had their bowl of oatmeal. So proud of that. But the energy drink was something that always, really got me curious, because talking to some friends, like being an athlete, and when you were racing IndyCar, like you're talking about energy, and some of my friends, like they're like, oh, I need an energy drink because I need energy, and I'm saying to them, look, if you didn't sleep last night and you're looking for that type of drink to wake you up, you're that's not an energy drink. That's not where energy comes from.
Yeah.
Like just go to a coffee bar, get yourself 4 espresso shot, and it will do the exact same thing, because what you're actually craving is that boost of caffeine to wake you up because you feel tired. But if you're going for a 100-kilometer bike ride, I promise you, you really need energy. And energy doesn't come from caffeine. Energy will come from, carbohydrate. They will come from rice. It will come from pasta. It will come from oatmeal. If you don't have the fuel to give you the energy, then I'm sorry, you're not going to last a 100-kilometer bike ride.
You're going to burn out. Yeah.
You're going to burn out, right? So, and then there was some year where like a few of us in IndyCar, we had like this support from, this clinic where they were giving us like vitamin IVs, like 2 nights before the race to accumulate, like a boost of vitamins, right? And the theory behind that was that, the body, when it basically doesn't have its immune system at 100%, basically when you're requesting your body for the energy, you don't have it all, because now it needs to compensate for the, let's say, 40% you don't have into your immune system. And because your body is constantly fighting to protect you, the best way of having 100% energy stored for you when you need it is to maintain your immune system at the top. If your immune system is running at 50%, that's why sometimes people say, oh, I don't know, I feel tired, I don't have energy, but they don't realize that they're actually fighting something, and just by fighting something, you're not going to have the energy because your immune system is not at the top. So we would get these push of vitamins, and also, like when you're getting dehydrated, when you get dehydrated, if you're walking in the desert, okay, and you get dehydrated, I'm sorry, but you could have all the energy you want, you could take all the caffeine you want, but the dehydration will make you feel that you're tired, and then you won't be able to go further. You're gonna just collapse there. So maintaining your hydration is also a source of maintaining the energy, right? And then when we were followed by some of diet people and trainers, like there was something that we were doing. So you would take your sugar, your blood sugar level in your blood, right? So you would say, let's go on a bike ride, okay? So let's ride. And then you would basically take your blood sugar, and as long as your blood sugar is staying constant, then you would know that you have energy. So if your blood sugar would go down, then you would crave some carbs. Then you would say, okay, you need a bit more carbs in your diet because I want your blood sugar to maintain. But we don't want to give you something with too much sugar, because sugar will spike your blood sugar, and then insulin will be created in your body to basically lower it down. And then as soon as you don't get your blood sugar at the same level and it goes down, then you get tired. So basically trying to create a drink that doesn't have, the sugar, that also uses, natural ingredients, vegan ingredients, and also just 2 grams of sugar for your brain. And then the natural sugar that doesn't get recognized by your body, so it doesn't create any spike, maintains energy leveled. Putting all the vitamins that I needed, and putting all the amino acids for the muscle repairs was a huge undertaking, because like if you want to have these type of product, you go for vitamin C, you have a powder. You go for vitamin B, you have a pill. You go for another vitamin B6, a pill. B12, another pill. Then you go for some amino acids, another scoop of powder. But when you try to put everything into one, it's not a joke, right? I mean, then you have like taste issue. And any of the people that have invested in that, they said, if you use aspartame and you use sucralose, we're out. We don't want to have these type of things that, like are really poison for your body. So we want natural stuff.
Aspartame's been controversial, isn't it, for years?
So then we use monk fruit for the to create the sweetness, right? So every time these guys thought that, okay, this is going to be like a 3-month process, but every time they were trying to bring all these ingredients in to protect the hydration and not getting dehydrated, put all the vitamins, put all the amino acids in, it affects the taste, right? So it was ended up being a 1.5 year kind of trial and error until we put it together. And it's quite cool because it's when you're a big when you're a big company, you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at the bottom line, you're looking how much you can make this product for less. But when you're a small company and you're not really looking, you're always only looking for doing something great. If it sell, and we will push it, and we will continue and save it. But if it's just for the I don't know, for the pride of having done something that that I was using when I was in IndyCar, and that you could use it before a bike ride, and it's basically something that you can use when you leave your house, and you're studying, it's great for you. You're at work, it's great for you. You're an athlete, it's great for you. It's just, that's what I wanted to do, because there was something that always made me curious about why they're calling it energy drink when the only thing that they do, it's creating heart palpitation. And when you're an athlete, you don't want no heart palpitation. You want your heart rate to be as low as possible, and you want to have the constant energy in all the conditions, heat, like you're losing body sweat and all that stuff. So I got involved in that, and I think we created something pretty unique. And now it's just, the process of getting it known and putting it out there. But for the pride of having done something natural and with no chemical product, and that you would take that with no fear of having like this combination of like high sugar and things that get your heart rate up. We don't have that, so it's pretty cool.
That's great. It feels like it's just like the best of everything, without all the bad stuff in it, and and it's
But
going to be
that's the it's a catch-22. If you get involved in something to make money, then your thought process has to be looking at cost, looking at like your hard cost and your profit margin and all that stuff. And then I was part of the recipe, and I know that when you're looking at it to make it like a good business model, you need to start putting things that are going to lower the cost. But if you do that, then you're going to be the same old, right?
Yeah,
So,
and it takes away from the product, doesn't it? So
yeah. So if you're willing not to look at that because you're not really doing it because you have like, okay, I want to make millions of dollars, but if you're really making it like this potion that is something special, then yes, then you have to accept the fact that your hard cost is going to be higher. It's going to be difficult sometimes to convince people to put it at this price because it's something unique, and then you need to educate a smaller group of people about your product. It's we'll
so
see.
it's like a juggling act, but obviously, we hope it.
I need to call some of my buddies in IndyCar and just get them to do a test drive and see what they think.
Do it. That'd be good.
Oh,
Get them to report back. Get some testimonials.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that'd be cool. No, obviously, we wish you all the best with it and hope it does take off because it sounds like it should do for sure. Okay, right. Gonna wind down. We always do a few little fun questions at the end. They're always the similar kind of questions, probably ones you've been asked before, but I like to ask them anyway. I was going to say, did you have a favorite driver growing up? But you touched on Gilles and Ed, and I guess they were the two when you were growing up for you.
Those two from the past, and some from the more present. I really like I really like Max. I really like Lewis. Easy to say because they're they're in the eye of everybody, but there's reason behind that. I think the Max side for me is the guy that really doesn't care, is the guy that is the go-karter at art. He basically raced for a friend of mine. He raced for CRG and Mr. Tinini in his early days in go-karting, and I'm a CRG guy as well. So there's the connection, but also just he doesn't care, and just basically I feel that he got into Formula One and he's driving his Formula One the way he goes to the go-kart race, right? And on the other side, you have Lewis, where I also feel that to me he has a very I respect it a lot because he proved that in any situation he's very level-headed. When things doesn't go right, like you can't lose your head. And I've seen drivers lose their head when they don't have it their way, when things doesn't go their way, when they have like a pretty bad weekend. It's tough to stay calm and just go to the weekend without creating any fireworks. And he's that guy. He's the guy that, you can throw a lot of bad things at him. Those last 2 years in Formula One, probably the worst of his entire life, but still, like just really level-headed and kind of like kind, no matter what, doesn't lose his head. Huge respect for that. And without really making too much noise about it, I think this guy is a pretty technical guy. Like he made some calls over the last 2 years. He made some statement over the last 2 years that were pretty informative for the team, and he must be a guy that knows what he's talking about, feeling the car, being technical, because even teammates around him are just sometimes they feel the car is right, but then all of a sudden they're wrong. So they thought the car was right, but the car was not right, and he was right by saying it. There's a problem, right? And so how come they get caught up into getting some feeling that all of a sudden everything's going to be peachy, but when the season starts, it's not that peachy. So, but he called it, and he must have like the ability to feel these type of things. So, for all these reasons, I have more in details, but there's the reasoning why I appreciate these guys. I'm at the level where I just don't love someone just because he wins races. Like I just don't love someone because like just barely I'm a fan. And I dream about him. I like to be precise on why. And also, Lewis was one of the first Formula One driver in some of the comments after a race that he always thanked his team and the people at the race shop and at the factory. And more people start doing that. But in the past, you would not hear Formula One driver. They would basically just stick to the answers and the interview and basically never really say anything about their crew. And Lewis was one of the first one to mention his team regularly and people start catching up. But he was one of the first one, and it stuck to me, because of if he's thinking about it, then he realizes the level of work that happens behind the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's now hundreds of people behind the scenes, aren't there? He's the first one to say thank you, which is lovely. I actually bumped into his brother Nick a couple of weeks ago, and he's an amazing guy as well. Absolutely, he's got I think he's got MS, or he's got something, but he still goes racing, and he's an amazing guy. They're an amazing.
He races touring car, right?
Yeah, British touring cars. Well, he did up until middle of last season, I think. He hasn't done anything since. He's been doing other things off track, and he's got a book out. But yeah, Nick is amazing. He's an amazing guy. Very cool guy. Okay, some easy ones. Okay, have you got a favorite track to race on, like a favorite circuit you've raced on?
So, Road America to me in United States, it's for an American racetrack that I've driven on, to me is a beautiful track. Massive high-speed corners, extremely challenging for the entire lap. Some blind entry, and the reward is great when you're pushing the car all the way to the edge of the grass, literally, like using every little bit of track, curbing, everything. But devastating if you go that inch too much, and then it destroys the entire lap, and it will destroy the entire straightaway, because some exits lead to a long straightaway, and then that sort of like extra inch that you wanted without like getting disciplined to take what you can take will basically penalize you a lot. So for me, it's one of the road course that I really love. And like I said before, street course wise, there's no way, like we don't have street course that come close to the Surfers Paradise track in Australia. It's long, it's challenging, the atmosphere. Also, like for a driver to love tracks where you go, it also has to have a bit of atmosphere. It can't be, if you drive onto a racetrack and you're by yourself and it's ghost town and there's no vibe, a track could be fun, but like it also affect the way you so like everybody will tell you, if you arrive early at a racetrack and you are willing to leave late, is because you enjoy the vibe, and Australia has that. So yeah, those two tracks to me, street course, road course, are the best.
Fantastic. That's cool. I've just seen in the comments, it's Nick has got where is it? Cerebral palsy. That's what he has, not MS. Apologies. But yeah, amazing. Nick Hamilton. That's what he has. Okay, let's have a quick look. Okay, best racing car you've ever driven?
To me, like the best open wheel car that I drove was the Panos race car that we had the chance to use 2007, and I only did Long Beach in 2008 because I don't know, like, so I came from Champ Car and sorry, kart. In those days, those cars felt like they were out of control. I mean, 1,000 horsepower, engine revving at 18,000 RPM, and lots of downforce with grip level that was insane, with tire that was insane too. But then we went from that to Champ Car, and Champ Car had still the Reynard, but detuned. So right. We had a detuned car. The Lola showed up. Sorry.
That's all right.
This is going to drive it.
A quick swing as well. Got a bit left.
So then we felt that we had like this crazy pace, and we went down. And all of a sudden, the panels showed up. And now the downforce level is higher, with more coming from the tunnel, so less affected by the wings. So we have more percentage downforce from the under tray, and so it's a more raceable car. So when you follow, the wings don't lose, the most amount of downforce, because you still have the under tray working. So it works with the the ground speed and not with the wind speed. And just the car was nimble. It was like wow, it was so quick. I remember in Las Vegas, we raced on the street course, and there was a chicane in the back straightaway before we went down and just came up the tunnel.
Oh yeah.
Man, the car was like, I mean, I talked to Will Power, and it's his favorite car as well.
Did he win there? I think he took his first win in Vegas, didn't he? I think Will.
Yeah. It was there was Will.
Team Australia.
I finished fourth. We were fighting with Paul and Sebastian and Will. Yeah. I was running the the Rocket Sport car, black and red, and just, I don't know, like, I mean, the car had downforce. It was grippy. You can feel the way the car was nimble in the slow corner. Mechanical grip was good. The weight of the car made it like super quick in change of direction. It had good stability. The braking was late for a car that we were still running, metal disc brakes. I mean, the decel was really strong. I mean, lap time was faster, with an engine that was detuned compared with the 1,000 horsepower that we used to have when we were running in kart. So, yeah, to me it was like and we raced that car in Brands Hatch as well in those days. And it was like really, really, we raced that car on the motorcycle track in Assen as well.
Oh yeah, love Assen. Yeah.
So really, really beautiful car to drive. Yeah, to me, as an open wheel car, that was really fun to drive. And cool. And in regards of sports car, look, I drove a GT3 car, a Mercedes AMG car in Monza, and on Paul Ricard as well. Beautiful track, Paul Ricard, by the way. But a lot of paint, like it's just, it's
Yeah.
wide open, like it's tough to see. To me, like, I don't want to say anything bad about anything, but to me, it lacks character,
Yeah.
in regards of track. But it's the modern Formula One racetrack with huge runoff, with paint that grips when you go off, all that.
Yeah.
But it lacks character. The thing is, I went there with very little experience. I drove the car, and I was like, there was 56 guys in Blancpain, and I ran second. It was good. I enjoyed it, but it lacks power. It brakes well. It has ABS. It had all the gizmos. Maybe the sports car series is built around the fact that there's going to be some pro-am lineup made, and so if you're racing with your amateur driver, he cannot be 5 seconds off the pace. He has to be closer to you. So beautiful car to drive, but I would say that just lack a little bit of power, and maybe remove the traction control and all that stuff and make it a little bit harder to drive. And then again, it will be less driving aids, and all of a sudden, it'll basically, okay, that's another beast to drive. But I think the V8 supercar, to me, was, and probably it has evolved, the V8 supercar was a really fun car to drive, and I think the next gen cup car now in NASCAR is close to that. So
Yeah.
bigger brake, 18-inch wheels. I think the NASCAR made such a big jump into the evolution of their car, because the 13-inch wheels were limiting the size of the brake caliper and the disc.
Right.
Now, by going with an 18-inch aluminum wheel, then all of a sudden you could increase your brake, so your braking power much better. Sequential downshift, driving it more like an open wheel car, left foot brake, all that stuff. And so that's why I think V8 supercar and the new cup car is probably like a really good car to drive, in regards of like getting your attention and being challenging.
Yeah. I think Shane Van Gisbergen would agree as well. He's sort of done the whole lot, hasn't he? He's doing very cool stuff.
Yeah, and you see, it's a good point. It's like a extremely good driver in V8, and jumps into a next gen car in NASCAR, and literally like adapt himself like really, really quickly.
Yeah, impressive stuff. Very impressive. Right, okay. Final question, final one. And it's a horrible question. I ask it to everyone, and there's no answer to it. I don't even know why I ask it, to be honest. But but I do, because I'm horrible like that. So you've raced against and with some amazing drivers down the years, and matched them and beaten them. I mean, I'm just going to name a few guys like Kenny Brack and Sam Hornish. We spoke about Ryan Hunter-Ray, Simon Pagenaud, Alex Rossi, Joe Newgarden, Bourdais, Tracy, Andre Lotterer. You shared the track with Justin Wilson. God bless him.
Neil Janney.
Yeah, Neil Janney is in there. We've got Hinch in there. Even guys, you shared the track with like Danica, with like Pippa Mann and Will Power,
Dawn Boss,
TK, Dawn. I mean, Mark Blundell. I saw Mark Blundell on Sunday. He's
Mark Blundell, Mauricio Gugelmin,
and like Moreno and Montoya and Mike Conway and Dan and Takuma Sato, Dario Franchitti, Scott Dix. I mean, it's just a ridiculous list of people you shared the track with. Is there anyone who has stood out?
I have a fun story, with Montoya, actually. Like, so in Brazil, I was on the pole, and Montoya was second on the front row in Rio, exactly. And he was unhappy about basically losing the pole there, and and I was sick. Like there's no tomorrow. That weekend. So I was on Imodium pills, like yeah. So not, and that dehydrates you a lot,
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't feel too good, I'm pale. Anyway, and even after being a grumpy guy after qualifying, one comes towards me, prior to the race, probably like just to say, hey, good luck, be safe, um, but I had to run away because I was gonna basically poop my pants.
You were gonna.
So basically, I ran away to go to the toilet, prior to the race. Actually, purposely avoid him because it basically came to me, and I'm
It was
like, oh,
happening. Yeah.
I need to go. It's happening, and I'm not gonna do it in front of Montoya. So I I run away, and I think he must have thought of me. What a prima donna guy.
Yeah. Just
What an ass, And so I never said to him, hey, by the way, I just left because I was gonna poop my pants, and I was actually pooping in my pants right when you came to me. So so anyway, I just kept it quiet. That was my. I changed underwear a lot that weekend, and but anyway, I avoided one prior to the race, and no offense, I'm not a bad guy. I'm very respectful, but I had to go, and it was really, really, really tough weekend health wise. I
yeah.
didn't had it easy. So yeah, that's my story with one.
If he didn't know the reason why you ran away, he's gonna see this. Maybe, I don't know. He knows
Yeah,
now.
he knows now.
That's cool. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm just talking about pooping pants with you and JP. That's amazing. That's cool. I think. But yeah, I mean, I've lost track. Anyway, of those drivers and some of the other ones. I mean, I can't stop laughing now. Is there is there a driver who stands out as maybe not being the best, or just someone who just stands out as impressing you, or just just liking the way they go about their business? Is there anyone that sticks out in your
No,
mind?
to me, like it might be a boring answer, but in reality, I love everybody. I like everybody. I'm not a complicated guy, and I'm a really easygoing guy, and I just I'm I don't like to have a grudge against anybody,
Yeah,
and same thing in my personal life, with my wife, and we've been together, like 22 years now, and I'm not able to go to bed at night with any things that bugs me,
yeah,
like, so I'd rather resolve and talk than
yeah.
just keep it for myself. So personal life, or business life, or race car driver life, I'm not gonna keep a grudge or something that really bugs me, and then go drive, on the track with it. And because I had so many little problems maybe with guys also, that when there was an issue, talked, and then
Done.
go through with it. I think nobody is perfect, like, and when there's something that you don't like, it's because you know somebody made a mistake, and not accepting the mistake. That means you expect the people that around you are perfect, and that's not going to happen, especially when you fight for the same piece of real estate,
Yeah,
at high speed. Something's going to happen, and you're not really doing it on purpose. I think drivers are not out there to harm other drivers on purpose. I think there's just one thing that bugged me in my IndyCar days, was that there's kind of an unwritten rules on an oval, right? And it's, you don't chop people off, right? I mean, you go
yeah,
in, you're basically using your lane, and so unless your car is pretty bad and you're like just hanging on to your life, like,
yeah,
okay. But when you're, like, when you're racing someone, you're trying not to chop someone off. And especially in the kart days, I would say that was like the type of thing where there was multiple lanes, and some of the tracks you could run too wide, and it was important to run stagger, like I said, because like the wing was affecting a lot the behavior of the car. And Michael Andretti was one of the guys that I had really tremendous amount of respect, because that dude, when you would go in at the bottom, that guy would stay at the top, and he would just not, you would, no fear. You could basically like just flat out, and no fear that that guy was going to chop you whatsoever. And if you would be at the top and he's at the bottom and you see him, he is not coming up. Yeah. So I told him that, we had conversation together in the past, and I always had like really amazing appreciation for him. He had some of his, kind of altercation with other drivers, but to me, when I raced him on an oval, it's something that struck me, and it always was the same thing, like some people would come up and you would like, oh man, and your butt cheek would get tight because you just almost crash into the wall, and you're like, oh man, and it would basically piss you off more if you would not drive those guys that way, right? So when you don't drive those guys that way and they do it to you, then it makes you more angry, So I mean, and that's to a certain extent, drivers, we're pretty good, it's not like driving at those speeds, it's not something that really makes us uncomfortable or scare us. We're almost more relaxed in the seat of our car than we are, basically going to a spectacle to see our daughter, right? I have way more, wet hands, and my palms get wet, and I get all nervous, when my daughter does something, scary than me driving a race car. So when we're behind the wheel of a car, we know what we're doing. Like when people say, when you confront someone and I don't know, I don't, come on, you know, you know what you're doing. It's like, so you could be precise, at 400 k's an hour, basically shaving walls by millimeters. But when there's another car that measures like 20 feet long and is like, 5 feet wall, you can't see it. It's just like, I don't believe that.
Something goes wrong.
Yeah, something goes wrong. But in general, it's when it's also when people make a mistake, I think you need to let it go. Like some genuine mistakes are always happen when people try. And I would basically give you an example. The NASCAR situation, to me, what makes me more out of control, crazy, and very, very like upset. Why? Because since you don't have open wheel and all your wheels are hidden behind fenders, okay, and you have like big, huge, strong bumper, at the end of the race, it's extremely inviting for your own personal glory to basically knock someone out without trying.
Austin Dillon, wasn't it? Dillon recently, yeah.
Yeah, that and like I was the victim in Mid Ohio, on the last corner of the race with Penske, and then 14 laps earlier, it took me like 8 laps of analyzing, of doing everything I could to make like a complete clean pass and not knocking out my main competition on that day. And I was like, let me do it right. So it took me kind of like 8 laps to basically figure out to do the best move possible. When the last corner of the racetrack, I get completely knocked out of the way, win the race, finish second. Well, if you go back 8 laps ago, knowing that this was going to be the way the guy was going to drive me, instead of working so hard to pass him clean, I would have knocked him out, and basically, here's my competition, it's gone, right? So I always felt that there's temptation, in everything there's temptation. You have the temptation of pulling the face mask of somebody. You have the temptation of tripping and holding the shirt of somebody at football. And so at that particular point, there's a referee. If he sees you, then he'll give you a yellow card. If he sees you, he'll give you a penalty. But it's up to, if you're not able to resist the temptation, then the referee is going to do something. To me, in those in those NASCAR cars, what really offends me and, like disappoints me is that there's ways of passing people, and I have a big amount of respect when people try something, try to make a launch at you, and they're missing it, but they tried. They went straight. Went from hero to zero. They go straight. You crisscross them. Someone blocks you. You go wide. You try to crisscross. It's on road course. There is alternatives to make a move and to pass. So using this like lame way of passing by just sticking behind the guy until the last lap and then knock him out. Like, I mean, my grandmother can do that, like you don't need to be, but when someone tries, then he gets my respect. But then if he tries, then potentially, you need to be prepared to basically also give up, because if he makes a move and that's what you want him to do, and you are too stubborn to let it go, then for sure you guys are gonna get. But it's that's why, like I would basically choose the guy that will make the attempt. He gets my respect. Then the guy that doesn't really try hard but really pushes you off, and then so and Formula One basically like it's the same thing. When you make an attempt, like basically you try. If the guy gives you room and he had the balls to basically go on the outside of you, right? Then don't try to force him out on purpose, because now he's there. The guy is there. He somehow he made the corner from the outside lane, and you're coming in. Now, if you basically purposely push him out, it's like, come on, like, I mean, that's where those are the type of things that really bugs me. But overall, over the years, like I think some of the things that I've been part of is, maybe I try something, I made a mistake, I ran long, and then, basically forced the guy not to be able to turn, but then I went straight and he turned back and he got my position, and the guy was angry and you missed your braking. Yeah, but I'm trying to outbrake you, If I would have been mean or lame, I would have put my wing in your tire and caused you maybe a flat tire, and, didn't really work so hard to pass you, and then you're gone. You would have been even more angry, because instead of like seeing my mistake, you would have been finishing 20th with a flat tire, and it would have cost me nothing, right? So it depends what you're looking for. So I maybe lean on the side of more being accepting the mistake of someone, but the guy is actually trying, then always the lame move by doing the minimum, but then you get the worst of it and you become the victim. That's really something that bugs me more. But I didn't really get into these huge issues with guys, because I think over the years the guys realize that the way you drive, I'm a nice guy, I'm a respectful guy, like I don't get caught up into some things where I'm just gonna purposely take them out or chop air, and then it makes your reputation. So maybe that's why I really never got into big discussions or big problems.
It's like it's like going racing the right way, isn't it? And doing things the right way, whether it be in an overtake or just general racing. And you mentioned Michael Andretti. It sounds like he was the guy who just did everything the right way, which
I'm sure other drivers maybe had some things happening with Michael, but then you need to look at yourself as well. What you do. What did you do, right? So to me it's kind of like, it's where you need to draw the line. Like, I mean, if you force yourself to be good and drive good, and this is how you're gonna drive other guys, you're gonna have way more higher percentage chances that they're gonna drive the same way towards you, right? There's always gonna be some things that are not, they're gonna clash. I totally understand that, but you get yourself more chances that people will drive you clean.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. Love all these insights that you guys give to us, and how you approach racing. It's fantastic.
I mean, Paul is a good example. Paul's not Paul's never been a bad guy, and he's a really nice guy off the track. Like I said, I know him from both sides, and extremely generous, like we're friends, and all that. But even though I'm a good friend of Paul and we're friends and we stayed in contact, I mean, sometimes when he's on the track, he's an ass, because he's willing to put his nose where he has no business, and he's just willing to take the risk, where somebody will put the brake, and say, no, I'm gonna basically resist the temptation. But Paul is the type of guy that will stick his nose into your rear tire, especially in those years where we had that little pointy, extremely hard nose. That's why he had the nickname the Chrome Horn. We called him the Chrome Horn. And he would basically stick your nose on the rear tire in the middle, and poof, you get a flat tire or basically loosing you off, and he has nothing. His car never has nothing. It's just he was the master of basically putting that nose there where he has no business, and that was what made you mad. I had like 3 encounters with Paul, one in Mid-Ohio, one in Long Beach. At the start, we were going to get like a pretty good race, and I didn't even make turn 1. I get in turn 1 and I have a huge flat tire, but it's not just a flat tire. My rim in the back is basic as a whole. That's how hard his nose got in. Even when the flat tire happened, then it hits the rim. So, like few of these type of things. But then contrary to that, then when you go on an oval with him, man, same thing as Michael. Paul, if you race him clean, he's basically, he has no issue going to the top, no issue staying at the bottom. And in those days, not a lot of people were so comfortable at the top, So when you were willing to go to the top, you were getting kind of respected by the guys, right? So, if you end up like going up in the 3rd lane up there and you're willing to go up there, then people start respecting you. So, but when in street course and road course, he was that kind of like sneaky guy that will always basically be the victim, but he was coming out of there with no damage, and that will make you go berserk.
I mean, I honestly, I think that's probably the best way we can end this chat is saying Paul Tracy's a bit of a teddy bear, but he's a bit of an ass as well.
He has both. He has both costumes.
That's fantastic. I love that. I think that's a good place to draw a line. I mean, Alex, I've thoroughly enjoyed this evening. It's been I could sit and talk to you for hours and hours and hours about motorsport, but really appreciate you coming on and having a chat. It's been fantastic.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, you're right. Motorsport, chatting about motorsport, we can spend hours talking about. It's in our blood. It's our passion. So, and thanks for everybody that are watching the Hard Compound, and keep doing everything you're doing, because it's what people love. Sharing this passion.
Yeah, well, and that's why we're here. To share the passion. I mean, there's still over 200 of you tuning in, which is lovely. Thank you to all of you guys who have put the comments in and the questions. I hope we've covered everything. I couldn't get to it all, but we're back live again on Wednesday. We're going to be announcing another live chat on tomorrow. We'll see you on Wednesday, guys. Thank you for your support. And Alex, once again, thanks very much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.